There is a quiet place where the land moves gently with the rhythm of water. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it now, a soft current sliding past reeds, the distant call of birds rising with the early light, and the faint sound of wood touching water as a small boat drifts just slightly before being steadied by a careful hand. This is the Nile. A river that does not rush. A river that does not hurry. It has always moved slowly, with purpose, as if it understands time in a way people never fully can. And along its banks, for thousands of years, there have been people who wake before the sun, step quietly into the cool morning air, and prepare for a day that feels almost the same as the one before, and yet never truly is. These are the fishermen of the Nile. Their lives are not filled with loud moments or sudden change. Instead, they are built from small, steady actions. The tying of a rope. The folding of a net. The careful push of a wooden boat into calm water. The waiting. Always, the waiting. If you stay with this story, if you let it unfold slowly, you will begin to notice something gentle hidden inside their routine. Something that does not demand attention, but quietly holds it. Because this is not just about fishing. It is about mornings that begin in silence. It is about water that reflects the sky without question. It is about hands that learn the same movements over a lifetime. And it is about a river that watches everything, and remembers. So for now, there is no need to rush. Let the day begin as it always does. The first light comes softly. It does not arrive all at once. Instead, it spreads slowly across the horizon, touching the tops of the palm trees, then the edges of mud brick homes, and finally the narrow paths that wind between them. The air is still cool. In a small village near the river's edge, a man begins to wake. He does not rise quickly. There is no sudden movement. He opens his eyes, listens for a moment, and lets the quiet morning settle around him. Outside, the world is not yet fully awake. A distant bird calls once, then again. Somewhere, a goat shifts softly against the ground. And beyond it all, steady and calm, the Nile continues to flow. The fisherman sits up slowly. His home is simple. The walls are made of dried mud and straw, shaped by hand long ago and repaired many times since. The floor is cool beneath his feet. A woven mat rests in one corner, and near the doorway, a small clay jar holds water from the day before. Everything has its place. Nothing is wasted. He reaches for his clothing, worn but carefully kept. The fabric is light, made for the heat that will come later in the day. As he dresses, his movements are quiet and practiced, as though he has done this same routine so many times that his body no longer needs to think about it. Because he has. For years, and years, and years. Outside, the sky is slowly changing. A soft gray becomes pale gold. And the river begins to show its color. He steps out into the morning. The ground is cool, slightly damp from the night air. A narrow path leads from his home toward the water, marked by footprints that have been pressed into the earth over many seasons. Other homes sit nearby, close but not crowded. In some of them, faint movement can already be seen. Another fisherman, perhaps. Or a family member beginning their own day. But there is little conversation. Morning is not a time for many words. Instead, there are nods. Small acknowledgements. A shared understanding that the day has begun, and each person will follow their part in it. As he walks, the fisherman carries very little. A length of rope. A folded net. And a quiet sense of purpose. The Nile is never far. Even when unseen, it can be felt. The air near it is different. Cooler. Softer. There is a faint smell of water and earth mixed together, a scent that becomes familiar over time, and then impossible to forget. When he reaches the riverbank, he pauses. Not for long. Just a moment. He looks out across the water. It is smooth this morning, almost like glass. The first light reflects gently on its surface, creating a soft shimmer that moves slowly with the current. There are no large waves. No sudden sounds. Only the steady, endless motion of the river continuing its journey. His boat waits where it always does. It is made of wood, shaped by hand, its surface worn smooth by years of use. The edges show small signs of repair, places where new pieces have been carefully added to replace the old. This boat is not new. It does not need to be. It knows the river, just as the fisherman does. He steps inside with ease, his weight shifting naturally as the boat moves slightly beneath him. The rope is untied with slow, deliberate fingers, and for a moment, the boat drifts just a little away from the shore. Then he takes hold of a long wooden pole. With a gentle push, he guides the boat forward. The water parts quietly. There is no splash. Only a soft sound, like a whisper, as the pole moves through the river. And just like that, the day has truly begun. Out on the Nile, time feels different. The village behind him grows smaller, its shape softening in the morning light. The sounds of land fade slowly, replaced by the quiet presence of water and sky. Birds move overhead, their wings steady as they glide. Reeds line the edges of the river, swaying gently. And beneath the surface, unseen but always there, fish move through the water, following patterns that have existed long before this fisherman, and will continue long after. He does not rush. There is no need. Fishing is not about speed. It is about patience. He prepares his net slowly, unfolding it piece by piece. Each knot is checked, each section straightened. His hands move with care, not because he must think about it, but because he has done it so many times that care has become part of the motion itself. The net is more than a tool. It is something he understands deeply. He knows how it falls into the water, how it spreads, how it settles. And most importantly, he knows how to wait. The sun continues to rise. Its warmth begins to touch the surface of the river, and the cool air of early morning starts to fade. The light grows stronger, but still gentle, casting long reflections across the water. The fisherman watches. He looks for small signs. A ripple that does not match the current. A movement just beneath the surface. A shift in the way the water flows around a certain place. These signs are subtle. Easy to miss. But over time, his eyes have learned to see them. Not all at once. But slowly, quietly, with patience. When the moment feels right, he lifts the net. There is no sudden force. Only a smooth, practiced motion as he casts it outward. For a brief moment, the net opens in the air, its shape wide and even. Then it falls, touching the water with a soft, almost silent sound, spreading across the surface before sinking gently below. And then, nothing. No movement. No sound. Only waiting. This is how much of the day will pass. Not in action, but in stillness. The fisherman stands or sits in his boat, feeling the slight movement beneath him as the river continues its slow journey. His hands rest lightly, ready but not tense. He does not expect immediate results. The river does not work that way. Instead, he listens. To the water. to the wind, to the quiet rhythm of his own breathing. Time stretches. Minutes become longer than they seem. And yet, there is no impatience. Because this waiting is not empty. It is full, in a quiet way. Back on the shore, the village is now fully awake. Smoke rises gently from cooking fires. Children move along the paths, their voices soft in the distance. But out here, on the water, those sounds feel far away. The fisherman is part of a different rhythm now. A slower one. A deeper one. One that follows the flow of the Nile itself. And as the sun climbs higher, and the light becomes warmer, the first pull on the net may come, or it may not. Either way, the fisherman remains calm. Because he knows something that only time can teach. That the river gives, and the river waits. And so does he. The morning continues, unfolding slowly, just as it always has. And without noticing it, without marking the moment, this simple beginning begins to connect to something much larger, something that has been happening for thousands of years along these same waters. But that story, like the river itself, does not reveal everything at once. It moves forward gently. And it will continue. Continue part 2. Next part 2. The boat drifts a little farther from the shore. Not far enough to lose sight of the land, but just enough for the village to feel softer, quieter, like a memory that stays nearby without asking for attention. The fisherman remains still. The net rests beneath the surface now, invisible, spread out in the water like a quiet question waiting for an answer that may come slowly, or not at all. The sun rises higher. Its light becomes warmer, and the pale gold of early morning begins to turn into a gentle brightness that touches everything: the water, the reeds, the worn edges of the boat, and the fisherman's hands, which have already begun to feel the slow warmth of the day. He shifts slightly. Not because he is restless, but because the body, like the river, moves in small ways over time. His fingers brush lightly against the rope connected to the net, feeling for the smallest sign. Sometimes, there is nothing. And that nothing is not a failure. It is simply part of the rhythm. The Nile carries many stories, but it never tells them all at once. Long before this fisherman stood in this very place, others stood here too. Their boats were shaped a little differently, their nets woven in slightly different patterns, but their days began in much the same way. A slow waking. A quiet walk. A gentle push into the water. The river has seen it all. It has watched generations come and go, each one leaving behind faint traces, footprints that fade, voices that disappear, and tools that slowly return to the earth. And yet, the routine remains. Almost unchanged. As if the river itself has guided it, shaping the lives of those who depend on it, teaching them without words how to move, how to wait, and how to accept what comes. The fisherman glances toward the far bank. There, the land stretches out in soft tones of green and brown. Small patches of cultivated ground can be seen, where others work with the soil instead of the water. Their movements, too, are slow and steady, guided by the same sun, the same seasons, the same quiet understanding that life unfolds one small action at a time. Everything here is connected. The river, the land, the people. Nothing stands alone. A bird dips low across the water. Its wings nearly touch the surface as it glides, searching, just as the fisherman does, for something hidden beneath. For a moment, their purposes feel the same. The bird moves on. The fisherman remains. He reaches down and gently pulls on the rope. Just a little. Not enough to lift the net, only enough to feel. There is a slight resistance. Or perhaps it is only the weight of the water. He pauses. Then, slowly, he begins to draw the net upward. The movement is careful, steady. There is no rush, no sudden effort. The net rises through the water, its shape returning gradually, droplets falling back into the river with soft, quiet sounds. And then it breaks the surface. For a moment, the light catches on the wet threads, making them shimmer gently. There are a few fish. Not many. But enough. They move slightly within the net, their bodies reflecting the sunlight in brief flashes before settling. The fisherman does not react with excitement. He simply nods, almost to himself, as if acknowledging something expected, something ordinary. Because it is. He gathers the net closer, removing the fish with practiced hands, placing them carefully into a small container in the boat. Each movement is slow. Each action is familiar. The net is prepared again. Folded. Checked. Held. And then, once more, it is cast out over the water. The same motion. The same quiet arc through the air. The same gentle fall. Again, the waiting begins. Time passes without being counted. The sun climbs, and the air grows warmer. The early coolness is gone now, replaced by a soft heat that settles into the day without force. The fisherman adjusts his position slightly, finding a balance that feels natural. His eyes move across the surface of the river, not searching in a hurried way, but simply observing. This is not a task that demands constant effort. It asks for presence. For attention that is light, but steady. At times, he lets his gaze drift. Not away from the river, but along it. He watches how the light changes as the hours pass. How the color of the water shifts from soft gold to a clearer, brighter tone. How the shadows of the reeds grow shorter, then begin to change direction. These are small things. But they are not unnoticed. Somewhere along the river, another boat moves slowly. It is distant, just a shape at first. Then, as it comes slightly closer, it becomes clear a second fisherman, moving through his own quiet routine. They do not call out. There is no need. A simple raise of the hand is enough. A silent greeting. An understanding shared between people who live in the same rhythm, guided by the same water. The other boat passes at a distance, continuing on. And once again, the fisherman is alone with the river. The second pull of the net brings less. Only one fish this time. It is small. The fisherman looks at it for a moment, then places it with the others without hesitation. There is no disappointment. The river gives what it gives. And that is enough. The hours move forward. Slowly. Almost unnoticed. The repetition of action becomes something gentle, something steady. Cast. Wait. Lift. Gather. Again. And again. And again. Each cycle blending into the next, until the day itself feels like a single, continuous motion. As the sun reaches higher in the sky, the light becomes stronger. The reflections on the water grow brighter, and the air feels heavier with warmth. The fisherman pauses for a moment. He reaches for the clay jar he brought with him, lifting it carefully and taking a slow drink. The water inside is no longer cool, but it is enough. He sets it back down. And for a brief moment, he simply sits. Not working. Not preparing. Just sitting in the quiet presence of the river. There is a certain kind of peace in this moment. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything is happening slowly. in a way that does not ask for attention, in a way that allows the mind to rest. The net rests again beneath the surface. The boat moves gently, guided by the current and the occasional push of the pole. And the fisherman continues, just as those before him have done, and just as others will do long after. Somewhere beyond this quiet morning, there are larger stories. Of kingdoms. Of cities. Of time passing in ways that change the world. But here, on the water, those things feel distant. What matters is simple. The net. The boat. The river. And the steady rhythm that connects them all. The day is still far from over. The sun has more distance to travel across the sky. And the fisherman has more time to spend on the water. More nets to cast. More moments to wait. More quiet hours to become part of the endless, flowing story of the Nile. And as the light continues to shift, and the warmth of the day settles more deeply into the air, something else begins to unfold, something that belongs not just to this one fisherman, but to all those who have lived and worked along this river for countless generations. That story moves slowly, like the current itself. And it continues. Continue Part 3, next Part 3. The sun continues its slow climb. It now rests higher in the sky, no longer soft and low like it was in the early morning, but still gentle in its presence. The light spreads evenly across the river, touching every ripple, every small movement, as if nothing is left unseen. The fisherman remains in his place. By now, his body has fully settled into the rhythm of the day. The small adjustments he makes are almost invisible. A shift of weight. A slight turn of the head. The quiet lift of his hand as he checks the line again. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is forced. Everything happens in its own time. The water beneath the boat moves steadily. It does not stop. It does not pause. Even when it looks still, it is always moving, always continuing its long journey northward. The fisherman knows this without needing to think about it. He feels it through the gentle rocking of the boat, through the way the rope pulls ever so slightly, through the quiet sound of water brushing against the wood. This movement is constant. It is something he has known since he was young. There was a time, many years ago, when he did not stand alone in a boat like this. When his hands were smaller. When his movements were not yet steady. In those days, he would sit near the edge of another boat, watching closely as an older fisherman worked. He would observe every motion, the way the net was folded, the way it was cast, the way patience filled the spaces between actions. No one spoke very much. There were no long explanations. Learning came through watching, and repeating, and waiting. At first, his hands would move too quickly. The net would fall unevenly. The rope would tangle. But over time, slowly, those mistakes would become fewer. Not because he forced himself to improve, but because the rhythm of the river began to settle inside him. Now, as he stands here, years later, that rhythm is part of him. It guides his actions without effort. It shapes the way he moves, the way he waits, the way he understands the quiet patterns of the day. He reaches again for the rope. This time, when he pulls, there is a clearer weight. Not heavy, but noticeable. He pauses for just a moment. Then he begins to lift the net. Slowly. Carefully. The water falls away from the rising threads, and the shape of the net becomes visible once more. There are more fish this time. Several of them, moving gently, their bodies catching the sunlight as they shift within the woven strands. The fisherman leans slightly forward, bringing the net closer to the boat. His hands move with quiet certainty as he removes each fish, placing them alongside the others. The container is beginning to fill. Not completely, but enough to show that the morning has been steady. He does not count them. There is no need. He knows by looking, by feeling, by understanding the pace of the day. Once again, the net is set. Once again, it disappears beneath the surface. And once again, the waiting returns. The heat of the day begins to settle more deeply now. It is not overwhelming, but it is present. The air feels heavier, and the brightness of the light reflects strongly off the water, creating a gentle shimmer that moves with every small wave. The fisherman narrows his eyes slightly, not in discomfort, but in quiet adjustment. This, too, is familiar. The change from morning to midday is something he has experienced countless times. It is part of the flow. Along the riverbank, the world continues its slow movement. A group of reeds bends gently as a light breeze passes through. A bird lands briefly at the edge of the water, then lifts again, its wings cutting softly through the air. Farther away, a narrow path follows the curve of the river, marked by the faint traces of those who walk it each day. Everything is steady. Everything is calm. The fisherman lets his hand rest lightly on the side of the boat. The wood is warm now from the sun. Its surface is smooth in some places, rough in others, shaped by years of use and quiet repair. This boat has carried many days like this. It has known early mornings and long afternoons. It has moved through still water and gentle current. And it has always returned. There is a quiet trust between the fisherman and his boat. Just as there is a quiet trust between the fisherman and the river. Neither one speaks. Neither one promises anything. And yet, they continue together, day after day. He looks out across the water again. This time, his gaze lingers a little longer. Not searching. Not expecting. Just observing. The surface of the Nile stretches wide, its color shifting between soft blues and muted greens, touched by the brightness of the sun. It is never exactly the same. And yet, it always feels familiar. The rope moves slightly in his hand. A small signal. He responds without urgency. The net is lifted once more. This time, there is very little. Only a single fish, caught near the edge. He removes it gently, placing it with the others. And then, without hesitation, he prepares the net again. This is how the day continues. Not in large moments. Not in sudden change. But in small, repeated actions that blend together, forming a quiet pattern that stretches across the hours. At times, the fisherman shifts the position of the boat. Using the pole, he guides it slowly along the river, moving from one place to another. Not far. Just enough to follow the subtle changes in the water. He knows that fish do not stay in one place. They move. They follow currents, shadows, and unseen paths beneath the surface. And so, he moves too. Gently. Without disturbing the calm. As the boat glides, the water responds with soft ripples that spread outward, then fade. There is no resistance. Only acceptance. The sun reaches its highest point. The light is now direct, steady, and clear. The shadows are shorter. The warmth is stronger. And the world feels slower, as if everything has settled into a quiet pause in the middle of the day. The fisherman rests again. Not fully stopping, but allowing himself a moment of stillness. He sits, his hands relaxed, his gaze soft. The net remains in the water. The river continues its endless movement. And for a while, nothing changes. But even in the stillness, something is always happening. Beneath the surface, fish continue to move. Along the banks, life continues quietly. And within the fisherman, time continues to pass, marked not by hours, but by the steady rhythm of his work. This rhythm is not something that can be rushed. It cannot be forced. It must be followed. And so he follows it. As he always has. The afternoon will come slowly. The light will begin to soften again. The air will change. And the day will move toward its quiet ending. But that moment is still ahead. For now, the fisherman remains on the water, surrounded by the calm presence of the Nile, continuing his work in the same gentle way. And just beyond this moment, as the day begins its slow shift toward the later hours, another layer of this life will begin to show itself, something shaped not only by the river, but by the people who return to it day after day, carrying their routines with them like a quiet inheritance. That story, too, moves slowly. And it continues. Continue Part 4, next Part 4, the light begins to change, though it happens so slowly that it is almost impossible to notice at first. The strong brightness of midday softens just a little. The edges of things of the boat, of the fisherman's hands, of the distant reeds lose their sharpness and begin to settle into a warmer tone. The river reflects this change. Where it once held a clear, bright shine, it now carries a quieter glow. The surface still moves as it always has, but the feeling is different. Softer. Slower. The fisherman notices, but not in a way that interrupts his thoughts. It is simply part of the day. He reaches for the rope again. His fingers close around it with the same calm familiarity, and he begins to lift the net. The motion is unchanged. Steady. Even. Unhurried. The net rises through the water, and for a brief moment, the sunlight catches on its surface once more. There are a few fish. Not many. But enough. He gathers them quietly, placing them with the others. The container now holds a modest collection, each one resting still, reflecting faint traces of the afternoon light. He does not measure the success of the day in numbers. He feels it in the flow of time. In the steadiness of his work. In the quiet understanding that he has done what he came here to do. The net is cast again. It opens in the air with the same gentle motion, then settles into the water as it always does. And once more, the waiting begins. A soft breeze moves across the river. It is not strong. Just enough to touch the surface, creating small ripples that spread outward in slow patterns. The reeds along the bank respond with a faint, whispering sound as they shift and return. The fisherman feels the breeze against his skin. It carries a slight coolness now, a quiet sign that the day is beginning its gradual turn toward evening. He adjusts the position of the boat. With a slow push of the pole, he guides it toward a slightly different stretch of water. The movement is gentle, almost effortless, as if the river itself is helping him find the next place. There is no exact path. No fixed location. Only a sense, built over time, of where to go, and when to move. As the boat drifts, the world around him remains calm. Another bird crosses the sky, its path unbroken. The far bank of the river seems a little closer now, though it is not. The light simply makes it feel that way, bringing out the shapes and textures of the land. Everything feels connected. Near and far at the same time. The fisherman pauses again. Not because he must. But because the day allows it. He sits quietly, his hands resting, his gaze moving slowly across the water. There is no urgency in this moment. No need to act. Only the presence of the river, steady and unchanging in its motion. This is the kind of time that is easy to overlook. The space between actions. The quiet moments that do not stand out, but quietly hold everything together. For the fisherman, these moments are not empty. They are part of the work. Part of the rhythm. He thinks, perhaps, of nothing at all. Or perhaps of small things. The condition of his net. The shape of the current. The way the light has shifted since morning. Thoughts that come and go without staying for long. Like ripples on the surface of the water. The rope moves slightly. A small signal. He responds in the same calm way, lifting the net once more. This time, there is a little more weight. Not heavy, but steady. As the net rises, it reveals several fish, moving gently within the woven threads. The fisherman leans forward slightly, his hands working with quiet precision. One by one, he frees them, placing them carefully into the container. The collection is growing. Still modest. Still simple. But enough to feel the quiet progress of the day. He sets the net again. The motion is as familiar as breathing. It falls into the water, disappearing beneath the surface, becoming part of the unseen world below. The afternoon stretches on. The light continues to soften. The warmth of the day begins to ease, replaced by a gentler, more comfortable air. The shadows slowly lengthen, though they are still faint. The fisherman remains steady. His movements do not change. Because the rhythm of his work is not tied to the exact position of the sun. It follows something deeper. Something constant. Along the riverbank, faint signs of movement can be seen again. People returning from the fields. Animals being guided back towards shelter. Small shapes moving slowly along the paths that wind through the land. The day is beginning to gather itself. To draw inward. Out on the water, the fisherman continues. The net. The waiting. The lifting. Again. And again. Each cycle blending gently into the next. There is a quiet satisfaction in this repetition. Not because it brings excitement. But because it brings steadiness. A sense that things are as they should be. That the day is unfolding in its natural way. He reaches for the clay jar once more. The water inside is warm now, but it still offers a small moment of refreshment. He drinks slowly, then sets it aside. His gaze returns to the river. Always the river. As the sun begins its slow descent, the light takes on a deeper tone. The brightness softens further, and a gentle warmth spreads across the surface of the water, turning it into a moving reflection of the sky. This is a quiet time. A time when the day feels as though it is slowly exhaling. The fisherman senses it. Not in a sudden way. But in the gradual shift of everything around him. The air. The light. The sound of the water. All changing, little by little. He lifts the net again. The motion remains the same. But the moment feels different. There are a few more fish. Enough to bring a quiet sense of completion. Not an ending. But a nearing. He gathers them, placing them carefully with the others. The container is now filled in a way that feels sufficient. Not full. Not empty. Balanced. The net is cast one more time. It settles into the water with the same soft sound. And the fisherman waits again. But this waiting carries a different feeling now. A sense that the day is slowly moving toward its close. The river continues to flow. Unchanged. Unending. carrying with it the quiet stories of all who come to it. And as the light grows softer, and the world around him begins to settle into the calm of the coming evening, the fisherman remains where he is, part of the same steady rhythm that has guided this entire day. There is still more to come. The return. The quiet end of the day. The small, familiar moments that follow. But for now, the boat rests on the water, the net beneath the surface, and the fisherman continues, just as he always has. And the story moves forward. Slowly. Gently. Like the river itself. Continue Part 5. Next Part 5. The afternoon begins to lean quietly toward evening. It does not happen all at once. There is no clear line where one ends and the other begins. Instead, the light softens little by little, as if the day itself is slowly growing tired and ready to rest. The river reflects this change with quiet grace. Where the water once held a bright and steady glow, it now carries a deeper warmth. The surface seems smoother, calmer, as though it, too, is settling into a slower rhythm. The fisherman feels it. Not as a thought, but as a gentle shift in everything around him. He stands in his boat, steady and relaxed. The long hours of the day have not rushed past him. They have unfolded slowly, each one blending into the next, until time itself feels soft and unmeasured. He reaches for the rope again. His hands move as they always have. Carefully. Without effort. The net rises through the water once more. There is a quiet weight to it. Not heavy, but present. As it breaks the surface, the light catches on the threads, now touched by the softer tones of late afternoon. There are a few fish. Enough. Always enough. He gathers them with the same calm attention, placing them with the others. The container now carries the full story of the day. Not in numbers, but in moments. Each fish a small part of the long, steady rhythm that began before sunrise. For a moment, he pauses. The net rests in his hands. The boat moves gently beneath him. And the river continues its endless flow. He does not rush to cast the net again. Instead, he looks out across the water. The far bank is now bathed in a warm, golden light. The shapes of trees and reeds are softer, their edges blending gently into the glow of the setting sun. Everything feels quieter. Even the air seems to move more slowly. A bird calls in the distance. Its sound carries across the water, clear but soft, then fades into the calm. The fisherman listens for a moment. Then, without thinking, he returns to his work. The net is cast again. One more time. It opens in the air, wide and even, before settling into the water with that same quiet, familiar sound. And once again, he waits. This waiting feels different from the others. Not longer. Not shorter. But deeper. As if the day itself is gathering into this final stretch of time. The sun lowers slowly. Its light stretches across the river, creating long reflections that move gently with the current. The sky begins to change color. Soft gold deepens into warmer tones. Hints of orange begin to appear, blending with the fading blue. The fisherman watches, but only for a moment. He has seen this many times. And yet, it never feels exactly the same. The rope shifts in his hand. A small signal. He responds as he always does. The net is lifted. Slowly. Carefully. The water falls away, and the net returns to its shape. There are only a few fish this time. Just a small addition to what he has already gathered. But it feels right. Like the final note in a quiet, steady song. He removes them gently, placing them with the others. Then he looks at the net for a moment. Not checking it. Not adjusting it. Just holding it. And then, without any sudden decision, he begins to bring the day to a close. The net is folded slowly. Each section laid carefully over the next. The rope is coiled with practiced hands, forming neat loops that rest quietly at his feet. These movements are just as important as the casting and lifting. They are part of the rhythm. The closing of it. The boat turns slightly as he uses the pole to guide it. The movement is gentle, unhurried. He does not push against the river. He moves with it, letting the current assist him as he begins the slow journey back toward the shore. The village is visible again. Not far. Just where it has always been. Its shapes are now touched by the warm light of evening, the same light that rests on the surface of the water. There is a quiet sense of return. Not an ending, but a continuation of something that happens every day. As the boat moves, the sounds of the land begin to come back. Faint at first. Then a little clearer. Voices. Soft movements. The distant rhythm of life continuing beyond the water. The fisherman remains calm. His work on the river is nearly done. But the day itself is not finished. There are still small moments ahead. Simple ones. Familiar ones. The boat reaches the edge of the riverbank. The wood touches the shore with a soft sound. The fisherman steps out carefully, his feet finding the solid ground once more. There is a slight shift in balance. A quiet reminder of the difference between land and water. He secures the boat in its place. The rope is tied in the same way it always is. Firm. Simple. Reliable. For a moment, he stands there. Between the river and the land. Between the work that has passed and the evening that is beginning. Then he lifts the container. It is not too heavy. But it carries the weight of the day. He holds it with care. Not out of effort, but out of habit. The path back to the village is the same one he walked in the morning. Now, it feels different. The air is warmer, but softer. The light is lower, casting long shadows that stretch across the ground. Each step is steady, unhurried. As he walks, others can be seen returning as well. Farmers. Workers. People who have spent their day in their own quiet routines. There are small nods. Brief glances. A shared understanding. No need for many words. The village welcomes him back without ceremony. It does not change for his return. It simply continues, as it always does. Smoke rises gently from cooking fires. The scent of food begins to fill the air. Voices are a little more present now, though still soft, still calm. The fisherman reaches his home. He steps inside, placing the container in its usual place. The day's work is now part of something else. A meal. A continuation of life beyond the river. He sits for a moment. Not resting from exhaustion, but settling into the quiet transition from one part of the day to another. Outside, the light continues to fade. The sky deepens into softer tones. The first hints of evening begin to appear. The river is still there. Always there. Flowing as it always has. And tomorrow, before the sun rises, the fisherman will return. To the same path. The same boat. The same quiet rhythm. But that is not tomorrow yet. For now, the evening is just beginning. And the story continues, moving gently forward into the calm of night, where another side of this life quietly reveals itself. Continue Part 6. Next Part 6. Evening settles slowly over the village. It does not arrive with sudden darkness, but with a gentle dimming of the light, as if the day is quietly folding itself away. The warm glow of the sun lingers for a while, resting softly on the walls of the homes, on the narrow paths, and on the still surface of the river. The fisherman sits just inside his doorway. The air feels different now. Cooler. Softer. Carrying the faint scent of cooking fires and the quiet presence of the night that is slowly approaching. Inside the home, there is very little movement. Everything is simple. Everything is familiar. The container of fish rests nearby, no longer part of the river, but now part of the evening. It will be cleaned, prepared, and shared, just as it has been many times before. There is no rush. Even this task follows its own calm rhythm. The fisherman rises slowly. His hands move with the same steady care as they did on the water. One by one, he begins to clean the fish, using a small, worn tool that has been used for this purpose for many years. The motions are quiet, measured, almost gentle. Water is poured from a clay jar. The sound is soft. Each movement blends into the next, forming a quiet continuation of the day's work. Outside, the sounds of the village shift. The activity of late afternoon fades, replaced by the slower pace of evening. Voices become softer. Movements become fewer. The day's work is coming to rest. A small flame flickers to life inside the home. A simple lamp. Its light is not strong, but it is enough. It casts warm shadows on the walls, moving gently as the flame shifts. The fisherman continues his work by this light. There is no need for brightness. Only enough to see. When the preparation is finished, the fish are set aside. Another small task completed. Another quiet part of the day coming to its natural end. He steps outside once more. The sky has changed now. The last light of the sun has faded, leaving behind soft shades of deep blue and faint traces of color along the horizon. A few early stars begin to appear. Small. Distant. Steady. The river reflects the sky. Its surface, once bright with the light of day, now holds a darker, calmer tone. The movement is still there, always there, but it feels quieter in the evening. Almost as if the river itself is resting. The fisherman walks a short distance toward the water. Not to work. Not to fish. Just to stand. He pauses at the edge. The same place where the day began. The same place where the boat now rests, tied securely, waiting for another morning. He looks out across the Nile. There is very little to see now. Only the faint outline of the far bank. The soft reflection of the sky. The quiet movement of water. But there is something to feel. A sense of continuity. A sense that the day has not truly ended, but simply changed. That what happened on the water is still part of this moment. Still part of the same flow. He stands there for a while. Not thinking. Not searching. Just present. Behind him, the village continues its gentle evening rhythm. Food is shared. Families gather quietly. The sounds are soft, carried lightly through the air. The fisherman returns to his home. He sits again, this time with less movement, less purpose. The work is done. Now there is only the quiet passing of time. He eats slowly. There is no hurry. Each bite is simple. Familiar. Part of a routine that has been followed for many years. Afterward, he sets everything aside. The lamp continues to burn softly. The shadows shift gently along the walls. Outside, the night deepens. More stars appear. The air grows cooler. The sounds of the village fade even further, becoming softer, more distant. The fisherman lies down on his woven mat. His body settles easily. There is no restlessness. No lingering tension. Only a quiet sense of completion. The day has been long. But not in a heavy way. In a steady way. A full way. He closes his eyes. The sounds of the night take their place. A distant insect. A soft movement in the air. And always, beneath it all, the quiet presence of the river. The Nile continues to flow. Unseen now, but never still. Carrying with it the same slow rhythm that guided the entire day. Sleep comes gently. Not suddenly. But slowly, like everything else. And as the fisherman rests, the world does not stop. The river moves. The stars remain. The night passes, one quiet moment after another. Somewhere in that stillness, the beginning of another day already exists. Waiting. Not yet visible. But certain. And when it comes, the fisherman will rise again. He will walk the same path. He will step into the same boat. He will cast the same net. Not because he must. But because this is the life shaped by the river. A life that continues, day after day, in the same calm, steady rhythm. The night deepens. The village sleeps. The river flows. And the story, like the Nile itself, does not end. It simply moves forward. Slowly. Quietly. Continue Part 7, next Part 7. The night passes without hurry. There is no moment when it suddenly becomes morning. Instead, the darkness slowly thins, almost unnoticed, as the world begins to turn once more toward light. The air is cool. Still. Carrying the quiet weight of everything that has rested through the night. Inside the small home, the fisherman stirs. Not fully awake yet. Just a slight movement, as if his body has already begun to follow a rhythm that does not need to be remembered. It simply continues. Outside, the sky begins to change. Very slowly. A faint softness appears along the horizon, a gentle shift from deep darkness to something lighter, something that hints at the return of the sun. The stars remain, but they begin to fade. Not all at once. One by one. The fisherman opens his eyes. There is no sudden movement. He listens first. The quiet of the early morning is different from the quiet of the night. It feels lighter. More open. As if the world is waiting. He sits up slowly. The woven mat beneath him shifts slightly. The air inside the home is cool against his skin. For a moment, he remains still. Not thinking about the day ahead. Not planning. Just allowing the transition from rest to waking to happen in its own time. Then, as he has done so many times before, he begins again. His hands move toward the familiar tasks. Clothing, simple and worn. The small clay jar of water. The quiet preparation that requires no thought, only presence. Outside, the first sounds begin to return. A bird calls softly. Another answers from a distance. The faint movement of life begins to stir along the paths of the village. He steps out into the early morning air. It feels fresh. Cooler than it will be later. The kind of cool that exists only in these quiet moments before the sun rises fully. The path is the same. Always the same. Worn by many footsteps, shaped by years of use. His feet find it easily. There is no need to look down. The village around him is just beginning to wake. A few others move in the same direction. Fishermen. Workers. People who understand the value of these early hours. There are no long greetings. Only small acknowledgements. A nod. A glance. A shared beginning. The Nile waits, as it always does. Unchanged. Steady. Its surface holds the faint light of the approaching day, reflecting the sky in soft, quiet tones. The fisherman reaches the riverbank. He pauses, just as he did the day before. Not for long. Just enough to take in the moment. There is something about this time of day. A calm that feels deeper than any other. A stillness that holds everything in place, just for a little while. His boat rests where it was left. Secure. Unmoved. Waiting. He steps inside with the same ease, the same quiet balance. The rope is untied. The boat shifts slightly. And once again, he moves out onto the water. The pole touches the river. A gentle push. A soft glide forward. The same beginning. The same quiet motion. The day starts again. Not as something new, but as a continuation. The net is prepared. Folded carefully. Checked without thought. Held in hands that know every part of it. He casts it out. The motion is unchanged. Smooth. Even. The net opens in the air, then settles into the water, becoming part of the unseen world below. And once again, the waiting begins. The sun rises slowly. The light returns. The colors of the river shift from soft gray to pale gold. The air begins to warm. Everything feels familiar, but not repetitive. Each day carries small differences. A change in the wind. A slight variation in the current. A different pattern beneath the surface. The fisherman senses these things. Not with effort, but with quiet awareness. He reaches for the rope. The first lift of the day. The net rises. There are a few fish. A simple beginning. He gathers them. Places them carefully. Prepares the net again. The cycle continues. But something else is present now. Something that is not seen, but felt. The understanding that this life is part of something much older. That these movements, these quiet routines, have been repeated across generations. That long before this fisherman stood here, others stood in the same place, following the same rhythm. And in the days to come, others will do the same. The river does not change quickly. It shapes time in its own way. Slowly. Gently. The fisherman is part of that shaping. Just as those before him were. Just as those after him will be. The morning continues. The sun rises higher. The light grows stronger. The net is cast again. The waiting returns. The boat drifts slightly. The water moves beneath it. The sky opens above. And once more, the day unfolds in the same calm, steady way. But beyond this single morning, beyond this single fisherman, there are deeper layers to this life. Stories that stretch across centuries. Changes that come slowly, almost unnoticed, shaping the way people live along the Nile. Those stories do not rush forward. They reveal themselves in small ways. Through tools. Through habits. Through the quiet passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. And as this day continues, those deeper currents begin to show themselves, just beneath the surface of the simple routine. The fisherman lifts the net again. The work goes on. The river flows. And the story continues. Slowly. Without interruption. Like the Nile itself. Continue part 8. Next part 8. The morning grows a little brighter. The soft gold of early light deepens into a clearer shine, spreading slowly across the surface of the Nile. The water reflects it in quiet patterns, small ripples catching and releasing the light as they move. The fisherman stands steady in his boat. By now, the coolness of dawn has begun to fade. A gentle warmth takes its place, settling softly into the air, touching his hands, his face, the worn wood beneath his feet. Everything feels awake. But still calm. The net rests beneath the surface once more. Invisible. Patient. Waiting, just as he waits. He does not look at the water in a hurried way. His gaze moves slowly, following the natural lines of the river. A slight change in the current. A faint disturbance near a patch of reeds. A place where the surface seems just a little different from the rest. These are small signs. They do not call out for attention. They simply exist. And over time, he has learned to notice them. He shifts the boat gently. A small push of the pole. The movement is quiet, almost blending into the motion of the river itself. He is not searching for something new. He is following a feeling. A quiet sense of where the water might offer a little more. The rope rests lightly in his hand. For a while, there is no movement. Only the steady pull of the current. Only the gentle rocking of the boat. Time stretches. Not in a heavy way. But in a soft, open way. As if each moment has space to breathe. He lifts the net. Slowly. The water falls away in quiet drops. There are a few fish. Their bodies catch the light for a moment, then settle. He gathers them without hurry, placing them with the others. The container holds more now. Still modest. Still simple. But steadily growing. He prepares the net again. The same careful folding. The same quiet attention. Then, once more, it opens in the air and falls into the water. This repetition does not feel empty. It feels steady. Reliable. Like a path that has been walked so many times that it no longer needs to be thought about. The sun continues to rise. The light becomes stronger. The shadows grow shorter. The warmth settles more deeply into the day. Along the riverbank, more movement appears. Shapes in the distance. People walking slowly along the paths. Some carrying tools. Some guiding animals. Each following their own quiet routine. The fisherman notices them, but only briefly. His world, for now, is the water. A bird lands near the edge of the river. It stands still for a moment, then dips its head, searching. Its movements are quick, but not hurried. Focused. Simple. For a moment, the fisherman and the bird share the same purpose. Both waiting. Both watching. The bird lifts again, disappearing into the open sky. The fisherman remains. The rope shifts. A small signal. He responds. The net rises again. This time, there is a little more weight. A few more fish. Not many. But enough to feel the steady progress of the morning. He gathers them, placing them carefully. His hands move without hesitation. Each motion part of a rhythm that does not need to be broken. The boat drifts slightly. The current carries it just a little farther along. He adjusts with the pole. A gentle correction. Nothing more. The world around him continues in the same calm way. The sky clear. The water steady. The air warm, but not yet heavy. He pauses for a moment. Not because he must, but because the moment allows it. His hands rest. His gaze softens. The river moves. There is something quiet in this pause. Something that does not need to be explained. A space where nothing is required. Then, without thinking, he returns to the work. The net is cast again. The waiting returns. The morning continues. The sun climbs higher. The light grows brighter. And within this steady flow, something deeper begins to take shape. Not in a sudden way, but slowly. This life on the river is not only about the present moment. It carries the weight of many years. Of small changes that have happened over time. Changes in the shape of boats. In the way nets are woven. In the quiet knowledge passed from one person to another. None of these changes come quickly. They do not interrupt the rhythm. They become part of it. The fisherman is part of that quiet history. Even if he does not speak of it. Even if he does not think about it. His hands carry it. His movements reflect it. The net rises again. A few fish. The same gentle process. The container grows a little fuller. The day moves forward. The sun approaches its highest point. The light becomes steady and strong. The warmth deepens. The fisherman continues. Unchanged. And as the morning slowly begins to turn toward midday once again, the rhythm remains the same. The net. The waiting. The lifting. The river flows. Always. And the story continues, moving gently through time, carrying with it not just one day, but many, blending them together into a single, quiet stream of life along the Nile. Continue Part 9. Next Part 9. The sun moves closer to its highest point. It does not rush there. It rises in the same steady way it always has, lifting slowly into the open sky until the light feels direct and even, spreading across the river without shadow. The brightness is clear now. The soft tones of morning have given way to a calm, steady glow that rests on everything it touches. The fisherman remains in his boat. His posture is relaxed, his movements unforced. By this time in the day, his body no longer notices the passing of hours. It simply follows the rhythm that has already settled into place. The net rests beneath the water again. There is a quiet stillness in this moment. Not an absence of movement, but a deeper kind of calm, where everything continues without needing attention. The river flows. The boat drifts. The air warms. He places one hand lightly on the rope. Not pulling. Just feeling. This is something he has learned over time. That not every action needs to be completed immediately. That sometimes, simply being aware is enough. A faint breeze moves across the surface of the Nile. It creates small, shifting patterns, breaking the reflection of the sky into gentle fragments that come together again just as quickly. The fisherman watches for a moment. Not studying. Just noticing. In the distance, the outline of another boat appears. It moves slowly, almost blending into the brightness of the water. Another fisherman, continuing his own quiet work. They pass each other at a distance. A small lift of the hand. A silent recognition. Then both continue on, without stopping, without speaking. The rope shifts slightly. A signal. Subtle. But clear. The fisherman begins to lift the net. The motion is steady, as it has been all day. There is a little more weight this time. The water falls away as the net rises, and the shape becomes visible once again. Several fish move gently within it. Not many. Not few. Just enough. He brings the net closer, his hands working with quiet precision. Each fish is removed carefully, placed alongside the others. The container now holds a steady collection. A reflection of the day's slow and patient work. He does not pause to consider it. There is no moment of counting. No measure beyond what he already feels. The net is set again. The same arc. The same gentle fall. The waiting returns. The midday air grows warmer. Not sharply, but gradually. The kind of warmth that settles over everything, soft but constant. The fisherman adjusts slightly, shifting his weight, allowing his body to remain comfortable within the heat. The sounds of the river are quiet. Always quiet. A soft movement of water against wood. A faint ripple. The distant call of a bird. Nothing breaks the calm. Time continues to pass. Not marked by clocks or numbers, but by the steady repetition of small actions. He lifts the net again. This time, there is very little. Only one fish. Small. Quiet. He places it with the others. No change in expression. No sense of loss. The river gives. The river withholds. Both are part of the same rhythm. The boat drifts a little farther along. The fisherman guides it gently with the pole, adjusting its position without resistance. He follows the flow. Never pushing too hard. Never forcing direction. This is how the day remains balanced. By moving with the river, not against it. He pauses again. A brief stillness. The sun remains high. The light is steady. The shadows are faint. This is the quiet center of the day. A time when everything feels evenly held. Not beginning. Not ending. Just continuing. The fisherman sits for a moment. His hands rest. His gaze softens. The net remains in the water. The river continues its endless movement. There is something deep in this repetition. Something that does not change quickly. Something that carries the weight of many years without feeling heavy. This way of life has been shaped slowly. Not by sudden events, but by the steady passing of time. Each day adds a small piece. Each action, repeated again and again, becomes part of something larger. The fisherman does not need to think about this. He lives it. He stands again. Reaches for the rope. Lifts the net. A few fish. Enough. The cycle continues. The sun begins, almost without notice, to move past its highest point. The light remains strong, but something within it begins to shift. A softness begins to return. The fisherman continues his work. Unchanged. And as the day slowly moves forward, the rhythm remains steady. The net. The waiting. The lifting. The river flows. Always. And the story continues, carried gently forward, one quiet moment at a time, just like the water beneath the boat. Continue Part 10. Next Part 10. The afternoon light begins to soften in a way that is almost impossible to notice at first. It does not change quickly. It simply loses a little of its sharpness, as if the sun is no longer directly overhead, but slowly beginning its long, gentle descent. The river reflects this shift without any announcement. The brightness remains, but it feels less intense now. More settled. More even. The fisherman continues to move with the same quiet rhythm. By now, his actions feel less like individual decisions and more like a single, continuous flow. Cast. Wait. Lift. Gather. Set again. Each part blends into the next without pause. The net rests beneath the surface once more. The water closes around it, carrying it in its unseen currents. There is no tension in the rope. Only a faint connection between hand and river. He looks out across the water. The far bank is slightly clearer now, as the angle of the light begins to change. Shadows stretch just a little longer. The world feels subtly different, though nothing has truly changed in a sudden way. A small ripple moves across the surface near the boat. Not caused by wind. Not caused by fish. Just the river adjusting itself, as it always does. The fisherman notices. Not with thought, but with familiarity. He lifts the net. Slowly. Steadily. The water falls away in soft drops. There are a few fish inside. Their movement is calm, almost unbothered. He brings them in, placing them with the others. The container now carries the full weight of the day's work. Not heavy. Not light. Just complete in its own quiet way. He pauses for a moment. The net hangs loosely in his hands. The river moves beneath him. The boat shifts gently with the current. There is no urgency left in the day. Only continuation. He casts the net again, but this time, something feels slightly different. Not in the motion. That remains unchanged. But in the sense that this may be one of the last times it will rise today. The sun is lower now. Still bright, but no longer at its peak. The warmth of the air begins to ease. A faint coolness returns in small traces. The fisherman feels this change without needing to look at the sky. It is part of the rhythm he has known for so long. He waits. As always. The rope shifts. A gentle signal. He responds. The net rises. Only a small catch this time. A few fish. Quiet. Simple. He places them carefully. No change in expression. No change in pace. The river continues to move beneath everything. Uninterrupted. Unconcerned. The boat drifts slightly closer to the path that leads back toward shore. The fisherman adjusts with a slow push of the pole. Guiding. Not forcing. The land begins to feel nearer again. The village is still distant, but present in feeling. A place he will return to soon. The light grows warmer in color now. The brightness is no longer white gold. It begins to soften into deeper tones. Hints of amber. Hints of quiet orange along the edges of the sky. The fisherman lifts the net one final time for this stretch of the day. The motion is the same as always. But there is a sense of closure in it now. A small catch. Enough. Always enough. He gathers everything together. The net is folded carefully. The rope is coiled in smooth loops. Each movement slow and deliberate. Not because it must be, but because this is how the day is brought back to stillness. The boat turns. Not quickly. Not sharply. Just enough to face the direction of home. The current helps. The river carries him gently toward the shore. The sounds of land begin to return faintly. Not loud. Not sudden. Just present again after hours of water and silence. The fisherman sits for a moment as the boat moves. His hands rest. His eyes remain calm. There is no feeling of completion in a dramatic sense. Only a quiet understanding that the work of the water is finished for today. The river continues behind him. as it always will. The boat reaches the edge of the bank. The wood touches land with a soft, familiar sound. He steps out slowly. His feet meet the ground with a small shift in balance. A return from motion to stillness. He ties the boat securely. The rope is placed exactly as it has been placed many times before. Firm. Simple. Certain. He lifts the container. The weight is familiar now. A part of him as much as anything else from the day. The path back to the village is quiet. The sun is lower now, casting longer shadows across the ground. The air feels cooler than on the water. He walks slowly. Not tired. Just steady. Others return along the same path. A shared movement toward evening. No words are needed. Only presence. The village feels closer now. Smoke rises gently in thin lines. The smell of cooking returns to the air. Life shifts from work to rest. From movement to stillness. The fisherman enters his home again. The container is set down. The day's work is complete. Outside, the sky begins to deepen. The first hints of evening settle over the land. Inside, the light is warm and low. A small flame begins to glow. The fisherman sits. Not thinking forward. Not looking back. Just resting in the quiet space between one day and the next. And outside, beyond the walls, the Nile continues to flow. Unchanged. Unhurried. Carrying every moment of this day forward into the next. The story continues. Always gently. Always forward. Continue part 11. Next part 11. Evening arrives in the village the same way it always does. Slowly. Without announcement. It does not feel like an ending, only a soft turning of the day, as if the world is gently lowering its voice. The light outside the fisherman's home becomes dimmer, warmer, more golden at the edges. Shadows stretch across the ground, longer now, resting quietly where movement once was. Inside, the small flame of the lamp burns steadily. Its glow is modest, but enough to fill the space with a gentle warmth. It does not push away the darkness completely. It simply softens it, making the night feel closer, but not heavy. The fisherman sits nearby. Still. Calm. His hands rest without effort. The container from the river sits in a familiar place. The fish are no longer part of the water. They are now part of the evening. Part of the quiet cycle that connects the river to the home. There is no rush to continue working. The day has already been lived. What remains now is only its settling. Outside, the village grows quieter. The sounds of movement fade gradually. Footsteps become fewer. Voices lower. The rhythm of activity slows into stillness. The fisherman rises slowly. Not because he must. But because the evening calls for simple actions. Gentle ones. Familiar ones. Water is poured from a clay jar. The sound is soft. Unhurried. He cleans his hands in quiet motion, as if washing away the river not from his skin, but from the memory of the day's work. There is something peaceful in this transition. From water to land. From work to rest. From movement to stillness. He steps outside once more. The sky has changed again. Now it is deeper. A darkening blue stretches overhead, holding the first clear stars of the night. They are few at first. Then more appear. One by one. The river is still visible from here. Not brightly. But as a faint presence beyond the edge of the village. It reflects the sky in a softer way now, no longer bright with daylight, but calm and dark and steady. The fisherman stands for a while. He does not speak. He does not move quickly. He simply looks. There is something about the river at night that feels different. Not because it has changed, but because everything else has quieted around it. The water continues its movement. Even in darkness. Even when unseen. It does not stop. It never has. He turns back toward his home. The path is familiar beneath his feet. Worn by countless steps taken at this same time of evening. Inside, the lamp continues to glow. The space feels smaller now, not because it has changed, but because the world outside feels farther away. He sits again. The day is fully behind him now. Not in memory, but in presence. Settled. Complete in its own quiet way. There is no need to recount the hours. No need to measure what was gained or lost. The river has already carried all of it forward. The fisherman lies down on his woven mat. The flame casts soft shadows along the walls. They move gently, almost like the river itself in a different form. His breathing slows. Not forced. Just natural. Outside, the night deepens. The stars become clearer. The air grows cooler. The village rests. The land rests. The river does not. It continues its long, steady journey through the darkness. Unseen. But always present. And in that quiet movement, there is a sense of continuity. A feeling that nothing is truly separate. Not the fisherman. Not the village. Not the river. All of it is part of the same slow, flowing rhythm. Sleep comes gently. Without effort. Without awareness. The fisherman drifts into rest as easily as the river flows forward. No beginning. No ending. Only continuation. And somewhere beyond the quiet village, beyond the sleeping homes and the still boats along the bank, the Nile moves through the night as it always has. Carrying the memory of the day. Carrying the promise of another morning. The story does not end here. It only rests. And it will continue again. In the same way. With the same calm rhythm. When the light returns. Continue part 12. Next part 12. The night over the Nile is never truly silent. It only feels silent to human ears. Underneath that calm darkness, there is always movement, slow, steady, continuous, like a breath that never fully stops. The river flows through it all, unchanged by the absence of daylight. Inside the village, everything rests. Homes sit still against the land. Cooking fires have faded into warm ash. Paths that were busy during the day now hold only the memory of footsteps. The fisherman sleeps. Not deeply in the sense of exhaustion, but in a steady, natural rest, as if his body understands this pause as clearly as it understands movement during the day. Outside, the stars remain scattered across the sky. They do not move quickly. They do not demand attention. They simply exist, holding their quiet places above the world. A soft wind passes over the river. It barely disturbs the surface. Only small ripples form and disappear, as if the water is gently responding to something invisible. The Nile continues its long path. Northward. Endlessly patient. Carrying with it the memory of every moment it has touched. In the stillness, there is no division between past and present. The day that just ended feels close. Almost as if it has not fully left. The fisherman stirs slightly in his sleep. A small movement. Then stillness again. There are no thoughts here that need to be held. No decisions waiting to be made. only rest. The village remains wrapped in darkness. Yet it is not empty. Life is simply quiet, folded inward for a while. And through it all, the river continues. Not as something separate, but as something that holds everything together. Far upstream, the same water that passed the fisherman's boat hours earlier keeps moving. It does not pause to remember. It simply carries forward. This is how time feels along the Nile. Not broken into sharp pieces, but flowing. Softly connected. One moment blending into the next. Even the night feels like part of the same long day. Just in a different tone. A quieter shade. The fisherman's home breathes gently with the night air. Walls of mud and straw hold warmth from the day, slowly releasing it into the coolness outside. The lamp has burned low. Its light is smaller now. Not gone. Just resting. There is something peaceful in this reduction. As if the world is gently simplifying itself for sleep. No footsteps outside. No voices. Only the faint presence of wind moving through reeds near the riverbank. The Nile does not change its rhythm for night. It never has. It continues as it always does. A quiet line of movement through darkness. And somewhere within that movement, the story of the fisherman's day still lingers. Not as something remembered, but as something that is still part of the flow. Morning will return. It always does. Not suddenly, but slowly. The same way everything here begins. The first hint of light will appear again at the edge of the sky. Then the path. Then the boat. Then the river. And the fisherman will rise once more. Without hesitation. Without surprise. As he always has. But for now, there is only night. Only rest. Only the gentle passing of time through a sleeping world. The river continues. The stars remain. The village breathes softly in darkness. And the story, like the Nile itself, moves forward without end. Not rushing. Not stopping. Just flowing. Continue part 13, next part 13. Before the first light returns, there is a moment in the night that feels the deepest. It is not darker than before, but quieter. As if even the idea of movement has softened into stillness. The river, however, never reaches that stillness. It continues beneath everything. Unseen. Unbroken. The fisherman sleeps through this hour without awareness of it. His breathing remains slow and steady. His body resting in the same calm rhythm that guided his work during the day. Outside, the village is fully wrapped in night. No smoke rises now. No movement along the paths. Only the soft outline of homes under the sky. The Nile flows beside it all, carrying the weight of silence like it carries everything else. Gently. Without effort. Time passes in a way that is difficult to notice here. There are no clear edges. Only gradual change. A soft turning from one state into another. Far in the distance, a faint shift begins along the horizon. It is not yet morning. Not yet light. Only the smallest suggestion that darkness is beginning to loosen. The fisherman remains still. But somewhere within the world around him, the cycle is already preparing to begin again. The air is cooler now. The kind of coolness that belongs only to the final part of night. It rests lightly over the land and water alike. The river reflects nothing clearly at this hour. Only shadows of sky and faint suggestions of movement beneath it. And yet, it is never empty. Even here, in the quietest part of the night, life continues in small, unseen ways. The fisherman's boat remains tied at the bank. Motionless. Patient. Waiting for the return of hands that know it well. There is a kind of trust in this stillness. A quiet understanding between river and shore, between water and those who depend on it. Nothing needs to be maintained in thought. Everything continues on its own rhythm. The stars begin to shift slightly. Not disappearing yet, but slowly preparing to fade. A new day is approaching, though it has not yet arrived. It exists only as a change in feeling. A subtle easing of darkness. Inside the home, the fisherman stirs again. This time, a little more noticeably. Still not awake, but closer. His body responds before his mind does. As it always has. The world outside is beginning its return. Not quickly, but steadily. The river continues its flow. As it did yesterday. As it will tomorrow. And as it has for countless days before this one. There is no interruption in its movement. Only continuation. The fisherman breathes more deeply now. A sign that rest is slowly turning toward waking. The village remains quiet, but it is no longer the deepest part of night. Something is changing. Softly. Gradually. The Nile reflects this change in its own way. Not through speed, but through subtle light that has not yet fully arrived. And in this space between night and morning, everything feels suspended. Balanced. Waiting. The fisherman will rise soon. He always does. Without urgency. Without hesitation. The river will meet him again. As it always has. And the day will begin once more in the same gentle way. With water. With light. With quiet movement. But for now, there is only this in-between moment. This soft pause in time. A world resting just before it begins again. And the story continues, carried forward by the river that never stops. Continue part 14. Next part 14. The first true sign of morning does not arrive like a sudden event. It arrives like a feeling. A slow easing of darkness that is almost too subtle to name at first. The sky is still mostly deep and quiet, but at the very edge of the horizon, there is a faint change in tone. Not light yet. Only the suggestion of it. The Nile reflects this shift gently. Its surface, still dark, begins to hold softer shapes, slight differences in tone where the sky above begins to change. The water does not hurry to respond. It simply follows. As it always does. Inside the small home, the fisherman stirs more fully now. This time, there is no return to deep sleep. Only the slow acceptance that the night is loosening its hold. He sits up. Quiet. Unhurried. The woven mat beneath him is familiar, as always. The air inside the home is cool, holding the last trace of night. He does not rush into movement. Instead, he sits for a moment, allowing the transition to happen in its own time. From rest to waking, to the beginning of another day. Outside, the village is still mostly silent. But not as deeply as before. There is a sense that life is preparing itself again. Not loudly. Just steadily. A bird calls once. Then silence returns. Then another call follows, farther away. The fisherman stands slowly. His movements are the same as always. Simple. Familiar. Unchanged. He reaches for his clothing. The same worn fabric. The same careful routine. Each action carried out without need for thought. Outside, the sky has shifted slightly more. The darkness is no longer complete. It is now layered with a faint gray-blue tone that stretches across the horizon. The river reflects this change in a soft, almost invisible way. As if it, too, is waking slowly. The fisherman steps outside. The air feels different now. Still cool, but carrying the first hint of morning life. The path toward the river is quiet beneath his feet. Familiar in every detail. He does not need to look down. The village begins to stir in scattered places. Not as a whole, but in pieces. One home. Then another. Then another. A shared rhythm begins again. Not spoken. Just lived. The Nile waits at the edge of everything. As it always does. The boat is still there. Secure. Still. Waiting. He steps into it carefully. The wood shifts slightly beneath his weight. A familiar feeling. Like returning to something that never truly left. The rope is untied. The boat moves gently away from the shore. The pole touches the water. A soft push forward. And the day begins again. There is no need to mark the moment. It is already understood. The net is prepared in silence. Folded. Checked. Held. And then cast into the river. It opens in the air. Wide. Familiar. Then settles into the water with a quiet softness. The waiting returns. But this waiting is not empty. It is part of something larger. Something that has repeated across generations without losing its calm shape. The sun is still not visible. But its presence is stronger now. The sky holds more light than before. The fisherman watches the water. Not searching with urgency. But with attention that has become natural over time. The rope shifts. A gentle sign. He responds. The net rises. Slowly. Carefully. A few fish move within it. Simple. Expected. He gathers them. Places them with the others. No change in expression. No change in pace. The river continues beneath him. Unchanged in its endless movement. And the morning begins to take shape. Not all at once. But piece by piece. Light will soon grow stronger. The day will continue unfolding. The same way it always does. And the fisherman will remain part of that flow. As he has always been. Quiet. Steady. Present. The story continues. Like the river itself. Without end. Without interruption. Only movement forward. Continue part 15. Next part 15. The morning now feels fully present, though it still carries the softness of its beginning. Light spreads more evenly across the Nile, no longer just a suggestion at the horizon, but a steady presence that fills the sky. It touches the water in long, quiet reflections, turning every small ripple into a shifting line of brightness. The fisherman moves with it. Not reacting to the light, but living within it. The net rests beneath the surface once more. The river flows around it in silent motion, carrying it slightly, adjusting it gently, as if it belongs there as much as the water itself. In a way, it does. The fisherman stands in his boat, steady and calm. His hands rest lightly on the rope, not pulling, not straining, only waiting for the moment when the river offers its quiet response. There is no tension in him. Only presence. Around him, the world continues to awaken. The sky becomes clearer. The colors deepen. Soft gold replaces pale gray in long, gradual layers. The village is more active now, though still distant from this place on the water. Smoke rises in thin lines. Small movements can be seen along the paths. Life continuing in its familiar rhythm on land, while he continues his rhythm on water. The Nile remains unchanged in its essence. It carries both worlds. Land and river. Work and rest. Beginning and ending. All flowing together. The rope shifts slightly in his hand. A small change. A signal. He responds without hesitation. The net rises from the water. Slowly. Evenly. The motion is always the same, but never exactly identical. Because the river is never the same. There are fish inside. A few more than before. Not enough to change the feeling of the day. But enough to continue it. He gathers them quietly, placing them into the container with the others. The sound is soft. Water dripping. Wood shifting slightly. Nothing more. He sets the net again. It falls into the river, disappearing into the moving surface, becoming part of the unseen life below. And once more, the waiting returns. Time continues to move forward, though it is not felt as passing in clear pieces. It feels like a continuous flow. Like the river itself. The sun rises higher now. Its light grows warmer, stronger, more direct. But still not harsh. Still gentle in its presence. The fisherman adjusts his position slightly. A small shift of balance. The boat responds immediately, as if it understands him without needing instruction. This understanding has grown over time. Not spoken. Not taught in words. But learned through repetition. Through years of quiet mornings like this one. He looks across the river. The far bank is clearer now. Trees. Reeds. The faint outline of distant land shaped by light. Everything feels more visible. But still calm. Still slow. The fisherman lifts the net again. The motion is unchanged. The rhythm remains the same. A few fish. Simple. Steady. He places them with the others. The container grows slowly fuller, but never heavy in feeling. Only in presence. The river continues beneath all of this. Unconcerned. Unhurried. Constant. There is something steady about this repetition. Something that does not ask for attention. But holds everything together. Each action is small. But together, they form the shape of the day. Cast. Wait. Lift. Gather. Set again. The same pattern. The same rhythm. Repeating without becoming dull. Because the river itself is never dull. It is always moving. Always changing in small ways. The fisherman senses this without needing to focus on it. It is part of him now. As natural as breathing. The sun continues its slow rise. The day becomes brighter. The air warmer. And yet nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels forced. Even time itself seems to move gently here. Along the river. With the river. The net rises once more. A few fish. Enough. Always enough. The fisherman remains steady in his work. As the morning continues to unfold around him. Quiet. Balanced. Endless in its calm repetition. And as this part of the day deepens into its full light, the story flows forward without pause, just like the Nile itself carrying every moment into the next, without breaking its gentle rhythm. Continue Part 16. Next Part 16. The river is brighter now, fully awake under the steady light of late morning. The surface no longer holds the soft gray of dawn or the pale gold of early sunrise. Instead, it carries a clearer, more defined shimmer, as if the water has opened itself fully to the day. Every small ripple reflects the sky with quiet precision. Every movement feels visible, yet still calm. The fisherman continues his work without interruption. There is no change in his rhythm. No shift in his attention. Only the same steady sequence that has been unfolding since the first light. The net rests beneath the water again. Invisible. Held by the current. Surrounded by the slow, constant motion of the Nile. He waits. Not with expectation, but with familiarity. Time, here on the river, does not feel divided into clear segments. It blends. Morning into midday. Stillness into movement. Silence into sound. All flowing together in a way that never feels abrupt. The boat moves slightly with the water. Not drifting far. Only adjusting itself in small, natural ways. The fisherman corrects it gently with the pole when needed. A soft push. A quiet return. In the distance, the land is now more active. The village is fully awake. Small figures move along the paths. The faint rhythm of daily life on shore continues, steady and unbroken. But here, on the water, everything remains slower. More continuous. More connected to the movement beneath the surface. The fisherman lifts the net again. The motion is unchanged. It rises through the water, shedding droplets that fall back into the river with soft, almost silent rhythm. A few fish are caught within it. Their movement is brief, contained, calm. He gathers them carefully, placing them with the others. The container now reflects the steady accumulation of the day. Not in excess. Not in lack. Just in balance. He sets the net once more. It disappears beneath the surface again. And the waiting returns. The sun has climbed higher. The light is now firm, consistent, and warm. The river reflects it in longer, clearer streaks. The fisherman pauses for a moment. Not because anything has changed, but because the rhythm allows it. He rests his hands lightly. His gaze moves slowly across the water. Not searching. Only observing. There is a quietness in this kind of attention. A kind that does not strain. Does not expect. Only receives what is already there. The river continues to move beneath him. Unchanging in its nature. But never repeating itself exactly. He lifts the net again. A small catch. Simple. Familiar. He places it with the others. The cycle continues without interruption. The boat shifts slightly. The current is gentle today. Guiding rather than pulling. The fisherman adjusts his position again with a small movement of the pole. No resistance. Only alignment with the flow. The day continues to unfold in this same quiet pattern. Each action blending into the next. Each moment connected to the one before it. The sun is now high enough that the light feels fully present across everything. The river. The land. The boat. All equally touched. But even in this brightness, there is no urgency. No tension. Only steady continuation. The fisherman lifts the net once more. The same motion. The same rhythm. A few fish. Nothing more. Nothing less. He gathers them carefully. His hands move with a calm certainty that does not need thought. Only practice. Only time. The container grows slightly fuller. Still not heavy. Still not complete. Just continuing. The river remains beneath all of this. Moving forward. Always moving. And in that movement, the fisherman remains part of something larger than the day itself. A rhythm that does not begin or end with him, but continues through him. The light begins, almost imperceptibly, to shift again. A subtle sign that the day is slowly passing its midpoint. Not yet changing fully, but preparing to. And as the river flows on, and the fisherman continues his quiet work, the story carries forward in the same gentle rhythm, steady, unbroken, and calm, like the water that never stops moving beneath the boat. Continue Part 17. Next Part 17. The river holds a different kind of stillness now. Not the stillness of night. Not the stillness of early morning. But the steady, full presence of midday that has softened just slightly at its edges. The light remains strong, yet it no longer feels new. It has settled into the world, resting evenly across water, land, and sky. The fisherman continues his work. There is no change in his rhythm. Only the quiet continuation of what has already been happening for hours. The net lies beneath the surface again, carried gently by the river's slow movement. The water folds around it without resistance, as if accepting it as part of itself. The boat remains steady. Not perfectly still, but never unsettled. It moves in small ways, responding to the river like something that understands its language without needing translation. The fisherman's hands rest lightly. There is no strain in them. Only familiarity. The kind that comes from repeating the same motion so many times that it becomes part of the body itself. He watches the water. Not searching. Not expecting. Only observing what the river chooses to reveal. In the distance, the land is fully awake now. The village continues its quiet patterns of daily life. Movement is steady but unhurried. Smoke rises and fades. Shapes come and go along the paths. But here on the river, everything feels more open. More continuous. Less divided. The fisherman lifts the net again. Slowly. Without change in motion. The water falls away in small, soft drops. A few fish are gathered inside. Their presence is brief, simple, calm. He places them carefully with the others. The container reflects the slow, steady progress of the day. Not large. Not small. Just ongoing. He resets the net. It disappears beneath the surface once more. And the waiting returns. Time moves forward, but without pressure. Without sharp edges. It flows in the same way the river does. The sun begins to shift ever so slightly. Not lowering yet in any noticeable way. But no longer climbing. It holds its place, steady and bright. The fisherman adjusts his position with a small, natural movement. The boat responds immediately. As if it has always known how to follow him. There is a quiet understanding between them. Boat, river, and fisherman. Each responding to the others without effort. The net rises again. Another small catch. Simple. Predictable. He gathers it without hesitation. Each motion remains unchanged. Each movement part of a long, continuous flow. The river beneath him carries everything forward. Water, light, time. All moving together. There is something steady in this repetition. Something that does not wear down. Something that does not demand attention, but quietly holds the day together. The fisherman pauses briefly. Not out of fatigue, but as part of the rhythm itself. A moment where nothing is required. Then he continues. The net returns to the water. The waiting resumes. The sky remains clear. The light remains even. But something subtle is beginning to shift. Not yet visible in a strong way. Only felt in the softness of the air. The fisherman senses it without needing to name it. The day is slowly moving toward its next stage. As it always does. As it always will. He lifts the net once more. A few fish. Enough. He places them with the others. The container now reflects the quiet accumulation of hours. The river continues beneath everything. Unchanging in its essence. But never the same in any single moment. And as the fisherman continues his steady work, the day flows forward with him calm, unbroken, and patient, carrying both water and time toward the unseen hours ahead. Continue Part 18. Next Part 18. The afternoon begins to lean gently away from its brightest point. It is not a sudden change. There is no clear moment where one can say the sun has shifted. Instead, it is a soft easing, as if the light itself is growing more thoughtful, less direct, more spread out across the world. The river reflects this subtle transition in its own quiet way. The brightness on the surface becomes slightly less sharp, slightly more golden at the edges. The movement of the water remains the same, but the feeling of it is different now. More settled. More calm. The fisherman continues without interruption. His rhythm remains unchanged. Cast. Wait. Lift. Gather. Set again. The net rests beneath the water once more. Held gently by the river's current. Carried without resistance. He stands quietly in the boat. His posture relaxed, balanced in a way that does not require thought. The boat responds to even the smallest movement he makes, as if it has learned to move in harmony with him over time. There is no urgency in his actions. There has not been for many hours. Only continuation. Only flow. In the distance, the land feels a little closer now. Not physically, but in feeling. The presence of the village returns subtly to awareness as the day begins its slow turn toward evening. The fisherman lifts the net again. The motion is unchanged. The water falls away in soft trails, dripping back into the river with a sound so faint it almost disappears into the air. A few fish are caught. Simple. Familiar. He gathers them and places them with the others. The container reflects the quiet accumulation of the day's work, steady and unremarkable in its consistency. He resets the net once more. It disappears beneath the surface. And the waiting returns. The sun is now lower than before, though still bright. Its light stretches farther across the water, creating longer reflections that move with the current. The fisherman pauses briefly. Not because something has changed suddenly, but because the rhythm allows these pauses naturally. Spaces between actions that feel as important as the actions themselves. He looks across the river. The far bank is more defined now. Shadows begin to lengthen slightly along its edges. Everything feels like it is slowly preparing. Not ending, but shifting. The net rises again. Another small catch. Nothing unusual. Nothing unexpected. He places it with the others. No change in pace. No change in expression. The river continues beneath all of this. Uninterrupted. Unconcerned. Always moving. The boat drifts slightly, guided by the gentle current. The fisherman corrects it with a soft push of the pole. A simple adjustment. No resistance. The air feels a little different now. Slightly cooler in places where the breeze passes. Slightly softer than it was earlier. The fisherman senses this change without needing to focus on it. It is part of the larger rhythm he has lived with for so long. He lifts the net once more. A few fish. Enough. He gathers them carefully, placing them into the container. The weight inside has grown slowly throughout the day. Not suddenly. Not heavily. Just steadily. The river remains constant in its movement. But the light above it continues to shift. A sign that the day is moving forward. Always forward. There is a quiet acceptance in this moment. Not of ending, but of transition. The fisherman continues his work. Not thinking of time. Only following it. And as the afternoon slowly begins to soften further, the river carries everything with it: light, motion, silence, and the steady rhythm of a life lived gently along its edge. Continue Part 19. Next Part 19. The light of late afternoon carries a different feeling now. It is no longer high and steady above the river. It leans slightly, stretching longer across the water's surface, touching everything with a softer angle. The Nile reflects this change without effort. Its surface is still alive with movement, but the brightness has become warmer, quieter, more golden at the edges. The fisherman continues his work in the same steady rhythm. There is no shift in his pace. No urgency entering his movements. Only the familiar pattern that has carried him through the entire day. The net rests beneath the water again. It is no longer something he thinks about. It is simply part of the river for a time, carried and held by the current as if it belongs there naturally. The boat moves gently with the water. Small adjustments happen without intention. A slight drift. A soft correction with the pole. Everything remains balanced, without effort. The fisherman's hands rest lightly for a moment. Not idle in a sense of stopping, but resting within the rhythm itself. A pause that feels natural, like breathing between thoughts. Around him, the riverbank feels closer in presence now. Not physically different, but more noticeable. The village begins to return to awareness as the day slowly moves toward its later hours. The fisherman lifts the net again. The motion remains unchanged. Water flows off the threads in soft drops, falling back into the river with barely a sound. A few fish are gathered inside. Their presence is simple, steady, expected. He places them carefully with the others. The container now holds the quiet result of many hours of repetition. He sets the net again. It disappears beneath the surface. And once more, the waiting returns. The sun has begun its slow descent, though it is still well above the horizon. Its light is now less direct, spreading more gently across the landscape. Shadows grow a little longer along the water's edge. The fisherman notices none of this in a sudden way. It is not something that interrupts his attention. It simply becomes part of the environment he moves within. He lifts the net again. Another small catch. Nothing unusual. Nothing new. He gathers it with calm, practiced hands. Each movement remains the same as it has been all day. Unbroken. Unchanged. The river continues beneath everything. Carrying light. Carrying motion. Carrying time. There is something steady in this repetition that does not feel repetitive. Because the river itself is never truly the same from one moment to the next. It shifts constantly, even when it appears still. The fisherman adjusts the boat slightly. A soft push of the pole. The current responds gently, guiding rather than resisting. The air begins to cool in faint ways. Not sharply. Just enough to notice if one is still long enough to feel it. The fisherman pauses again. A quiet moment within the larger rhythm. No action required. No decision needed. Then he continues. The net returns to the water. The waiting resumes. The sky now carries deeper tones near the edges. Hints that evening is approaching, though still far from fully arrived. The river reflects these changes softly. Its surface shifting between brightness and warmth, light and shadow, all at once. The fisherman lifts the net once more. A few fish. Enough. Always enough. He places them with the others. The container reflects the slow, steady accumulation of the day. Not complete. Not empty. Just continuing. The river flows on. Unchanging in its essence. But always moving forward. And as this part of the day settles further into its gentle transition, everything along the Nile begins to lean quietly toward evening without stopping, without rushing, simply flowing into what comes next. Continue Part 20. Next Part 20. The afternoon light now feels softer. American Samoa, if it has begun to loosen its grip on the world. It still fills the sky, still touches the river in wide, gentle reflections, but there is a quieter quality to it. A sense that the day is no longer rising, but slowly settling into its next form. The fisherman continues his steady rhythm. There is no change in his movement. No shift in his attention. Only the same quiet cycle that has carried him from early morning into this later part of the day. The net rests beneath the water once again. Held by the river. Carried without resistance. Existing for a time in a space between movement and stillness. The boat drifts gently, following the natural flow of the current. The fisherman makes small corrections when needed. A soft push. A slight adjustment. Nothing more. Everything remains balanced. His hands rest for a moment on the rope. There is no tension in them. Only familiarity. The kind that comes from hours of repetition, where movement becomes second nature. The river around him feels slightly different now. Not in shape or direction, but in tone. A subtle deepening of color beneath the light. A quiet shift toward evening that is not yet fully formed. The fisherman lifts the net again. The motion remains unchanged. Water falls away in thin streams, returning to the river with soft, fading sounds. A few fish are gathered inside. Simple. Expected. He places them carefully with the others. The container now carries the full story of the day's work in its quiet accumulation. He sets the net once more. It disappears beneath the surface. And the waiting returns. The sun continues its slow descent. Still bright, but no longer high. Its light stretches longer across the water, creating patterns that move with the current. The fisherman watches the river without urgency. Not searching. Not expecting. Only observing what naturally appears in front of him. A small ripple passes near the boat. Then fades. The river does not hold anything still for long. Everything is in motion, even when it seems calm. He lifts the net again. Another small catch. Nothing unexpected. Nothing unusual. He gathers it, placing it with the others. His movements remain steady, unchanged, deeply familiar. The river continues beneath all of this. Carrying light, movement, and time in the same flowing direction. There is a quiet acceptance in this part of the day. Not of ending, but of transition. A gentle turning toward evening that does not rush or resist. The fisherman adjusts the boat slightly with the pole. A small correction. The current responds softly. As it always does. The air feels cooler now in brief moments when the breeze moves across the water. Not strong. Just noticeable. The fisherman pauses again. Stillness within movement. A moment where nothing is required. Then he continues. The net returns to the water. The waiting resumes. The sky begins to deepen at the edges. Hints of evening begin to gather in the distance. Not fully present, but approaching. The river reflects this change in a subtle way. Its surface no longer holds the sharp brightness of earlier hours. Instead, it carries a softer glow. The fisherman lifts the net once more. A few fish. Enough. Always enough. He places them with the others. The container now feels complete for the day in a quiet, unspoken way. The river flows on. Unchanged in its nature. But always moving forward. Always carrying everything with it. And as the day gently leans further into its final stretch, the fisherman continues his steady work, each motion part of a rhythm that has no beginning or end, only flow. Continue part 21. Next part 21. The river feels different now, though nothing about it has truly changed. It is still the same Nile, moving with its steady, patient current. But the light above it has shifted again, and that shift changes everything in a quiet, almost unspoken way. The brightness is softer now. Wider. Less direct. As if the day is slowly lowering its voice. The fisherman continues as he has all day. There is no break in his rhythm. No interruption in his movement. Only the same gentle cycle that has carried him from morning into this late stretch of afternoon. The net rests beneath the water again. It is no longer something he thinks about consciously. It is simply part of the river for a time, held by its movement, shaped by its flow. The boat moves slightly with the current. A soft, natural drift. The fisherman adjusts it without urgency. A light push with the pole. A quiet correction. Everything remains in balance. His hands rest briefly. Not because the work is finished, but because the rhythm allows these pauses to exist naturally within it. The riverbank feels closer now in feeling, even if not in distance. The village begins to return to awareness as the day moves gently toward its final hours. The fisherman lifts the net again. The motion is unchanged. The water releases it in soft streams that fall back into the river without sound or disturbance. A few fish are inside. Simple. Familiar. Expected. He places them with the others. The container reflects the slow accumulation of the entire day's work. Steady. Unremarkable in its consistency. He sets the net again. It disappears beneath the surface. And the waiting returns. The sun is now lower than before. Its light stretches longer across the river, turning everything it touches into warm, extended reflections. The fisherman watches the water. Not with anticipation. Not with impatience. Only with the quiet attention that has guided him through every hour of the day. A faint breeze moves across the surface of the Nile. It is light enough that it does not disturb the calm, only adds small movement to the reflection of the sky. The fisherman lifts the net again. Another small catch. Nothing unusual. Nothing unexpected. He gathers it and places it with the others. His movements remain unchanged. Smooth. Familiar. Deeply practiced. The river continues beneath all of this. Carrying everything forward. Light. Water. Time. All moving together in the same direction. There is something quietly complete about this stage of the day. Not an ending, but a nearing of one. A sense that the rhythm is slowly preparing to turn toward rest. The fisherman adjusts the boat once more. A gentle shift with the pole. The current responds as it always does. Softly. Without resistance. The air carries a slightly cooler tone now. Not strong. Just enough to notice between movements. The fisherman pauses again. Stillness within the flow. A moment that does not interrupt the day, but belongs to it completely. Then he continues. The net returns to the water. The waiting resumes. The sky deepens further at the edges. Evening is no longer distant. It is slowly becoming present. Not fully arrived, but no longer far away. The river reflects this change in its own way. Its surface now less bright, more subdued, carrying a calm that feels different from earlier hours. The fisherman lifts the net once more. A few fish. Enough. Always enough. He places them with the others. The container now feels settled in its purpose for the day. Not full. Not empty. Just complete in its quiet way. The river flows on. Unchanged in its essence. But always moving forward. Always carrying the day toward its final transformation. And as this moment of late afternoon continues to soften into evening, the fisherman remains in his steady rhythm, part of the river, part of the light, part of the slow and endless flow of life along its banks. Continue Part 22 Evening Transition Phase. Next Part 22 Evening begins to arrive in a way that is almost impossible to mark at a single moment. It does not come suddenly. It does not announce itself. It simply grows quietly, steadily, like a soft dimming of the world. The light over the Nile is no longer strong and high. It has lowered itself, stretching across the water in long, gentle paths of gold and fading amber. The fisherman continues his work. But now, something in the rhythm feels slightly different. Not in movement. Not in effort. Only in tone. A quiet sense that the day is nearing its final stretch. The net rests beneath the surface once more. Held by the river. Carried by its current. Existing in that unseen space where time feels suspended. The boat drifts gently. The current guides it more than the fisherman does now. His corrections are smaller. Softer. Almost unnecessary. The river feels wider in this light. Not physically, but in feeling. As if the distance between one side and the other has become more open, more calm, more quiet. The fisherman lifts the net again. The motion remains unchanged. Water slides off in thin, fading trails, returning to the river in silence. A few fish are inside. Simple. Familiar. He places them with the others. The container now holds the full accumulation of the day's steady labor. He does not look at it for long. There is no need. The net is set once more. It disappears beneath the surface. And the waiting returns. The sun is lower now. Its presence is still visible, but softened. The brightness no longer fills everything equally. It gathers more gently, more selectively, across the water. Shadows begin to stretch along the river's edge. Not sharply, but gradually. As if the land itself is slowly leaning into evening. The fisherman pauses. A long, quiet moment within the rhythm. Not an interruption, but part of it. He looks across the river. The far bank is now more defined by contrast than by light. Shapes are clearer, but calmer. Less detailed in brightness. More defined in silhouette. Everything feels like it is preparing. Not ending quickly, but settling. The fisherman lifts the net again. A final small catch of this stretch. Nothing unusual. Nothing unexpected. He gathers it carefully. The movement is slow, familiar, complete. Each action feels like part of a closing pattern that does not need to be spoken. The river continues beneath everything, unchanged in its nature, but now carrying the day toward its quiet conclusion. The fisherman resets the net, but there is a sense now that fewer casts remain. Not because it is known, but because it is felt. The sky deepens further. Warm tones fade into cooler ones at the edges. The transition toward evening is now unmistakable. The air begins to soften. Not in temperature alone, but in presence. As if everything has become slightly quieter, slightly more still. The fisherman lifts the net once more. A few fish. Enough. As always. He places them with the others. The container now feels like it belongs fully to the end of the day. Balanced. Complete in its quiet way. The river flows on, carrying the last light across its surface, reflecting the sky in longer, softer lines. There is no rush, no urgency, only continuation toward rest. The fisherman adjusts the boat one final time for this stretch. A gentle movement with the pole. The current guides more than he does now. And in this shared motion between water and human, the day begins to feel like it is gently closing its final pages. The net rests again beneath the surface. The waiting returns. But it feels different now. Quieter. More final in tone. The fisherman does not hurry. He never has. The river does not hurry either. It never does. And as evening settles more fully across the Nile, everything, the water, the boat, the land, and the man within it, moves together into a softer rhythm, where the day slowly begins to rest without ever truly stopping. Continue Part 23, Final Evening plus Return plus Closing Sequence. Next Part 23. Evening now feels fully present along the Nile. The sky is no longer holding the bright weight of daytime. Instead, it has softened into deeper tones, muted gold near the horizon, slowly giving way to calm blues and quiet shadows above. The river reflects all of it. Not as a mirror that repeats, but as a surface that gently absorbs the changing light and carries it forward. The fisherman continues, but the rhythm of the day has shifted. It is still the same work. Still the same motion. Yet everything feels slightly slower now, as if even time itself has begun to settle. The net rests beneath the water again, held by the current. No longer part of the day's urgency, but part of its closing flow. The boat moves with a softer drift now. The fisherman's hand on the pole is light. Less correction is needed. The river guides him more than he guides the boat. In the distance, the riverbank feels closer again. Not because of movement alone, but because the day is drawing everything back toward land, toward rest, toward stillness. The fisherman lifts the net once more. The motion is familiar. Almost automatic now. Water falls away in thin, quiet streams that disappear into the river without sound. A few fish are inside. Small. Simple. Expected. He places them with the others. The container now feels like the full shape of the day. He does not adjust it further. There is no need to count. No need to measure. Only to acknowledge that the work has continued as it always does. The net is set again. But this time, there is a different feeling in the waiting. A sense that this may be among the final casts. Not spoken. Not decided. Only felt in the slow turning of the light. The sun is low now. It no longer sits high above the world. It leans closer to the horizon, spreading long reflections across the river's surface. Everything it touches feels stretched. Calm. Softened. The fisherman watches the water quietly. Not searching. Not expecting. Only present. A faint breeze moves across the river. It carries a cooler tone now. Enough to remind the body that evening is fully arriving. The fisherman lifts the net again. A small catch. Nothing more. Nothing less. He gathers it carefully. Each movement unhurried. Each action part of a rhythm that has guided the entire day. The river continues beneath him. Unbroken. Unchanging in its essence. But always shifting in detail. The boat turns slightly now. More naturally toward the shore. The current helps this movement. As if it, too, understands the direction of the day. The fisherman does not resist. There is no reason to stay longer. The rhythm has already begun its return. The net is lifted once more. A final small gathering. Simple. Familiar. Complete. He places it with the others. The container now feels finished in a quiet way. Not marked. Not announced. Just understood. The river glows faintly under the last strong light of the sun. Gold fading into amber. Amber fading into dusk. The fisherman begins the slow return toward the riverbank. The boat responds easily, carried more than steered. The village is visible again now. Small lights beginning to appear. Soft signs of life returning to enclosed spaces. The boat reaches the shore with a gentle touch. No noise. No interruption. Just arrival. He steps out slowly. The ground feels steady beneath his feet. Different from the movement of water. But equally familiar. He ties the boat. The rope rests securely, as it always does. A quiet closing of the day's movement. The container is lifted. Its weight is steady. Not heavy in burden. But full of the day's quiet work. The path back to the village is calm. Shadows are longer now. The air cooler. The sky deepening. Other fishermen return along the same path. No words are needed. Only small acknowledgements. Shared understanding without speech. The fisherman reaches his home. Inside, a soft glow begins again. Warm light returning to enclosed space. The day's work is set down. Not as something finished with effort, but as something naturally complete. Outside, the Nile continues its flow into night. The same river. The same movement. Now under darker skies. And as evening settles fully over the land, the fisherman rests not as an end, but as part of the same continuous rhythm that will begin again when morning returns. The story remains with the river. Quiet. Endless. Still flowing forward. If you want, say next again and I'll continue into the deep night plus closing final part 24/ending fade out. Next part 24 night arrives gently over the Nile, without ceremony, without pause. It does not feel like something that happens all at once. Instead, it feels like something that slowly settles down over everything, layer by layer, until the world becomes quieter in tone and softer in shape. The last traces of sunset fade behind the horizon. And the sky deepens into a calm, wide darkness. The fisherman is no longer on the water. His boat rests tied along the riverbank, secure in its place, as it has been many times before. There is no movement in it now. Only stillness. Only rest. Inside his home, a small light glows. Not bright. Not strong. Just enough to hold the space together as night grows outside. The walls feel warmer here than the air beyond them. A quiet shelter from the wide openness of the river. The fisherman sits in silence. His hands are still. His body no longer carries the motion of the day. Only its memory remains, soft and quiet, like the echo of water that has already passed downstream. Outside, the Nile continues. It does not stop for evening. It does not slow for night. It flows the same way it always has, steady, patient, endless. The surface of the river now reflects only faint light from the stars. Not sharply, but in broken, gentle patterns that appear and disappear with the smallest movement of water. The village is quiet again. Lights are few. Sounds are distant. Life has folded inward for the night, resting after its long day. The fisherman lies down slowly. There is no urgency in the movement. No need to hold on to anything from the day. Everything has already been carried forward by the river. His breathing becomes steady, slow, even. Outside, the wind moves lightly across the water. It does not disturb the river, only passes over it, like a quiet reminder that the world is still turning. The Nile continues its flow through darkness. Unseen, but never absent. It carries everything without needing to be witnessed. There is something comforting in this continuity. Something that does not change with time of day or human presence. It simply remains. The fisherman's home grows quieter. The light inside softens further. Shadows rest gently along the walls. Sleep comes without effort. Not as an ending, but as a return to stillness. Outside, the river keeps moving. Through night. Through distance. Through silence. It holds the memory of the day that has passed. The casts. The weights. The gentle lifting of nets. The slow accumulation of small moments that made up a life lived along its edge. And now, all of it moves forward together, carried by water that never stops, never rushes, never forgets. The stars remain above the river. Quiet. Constant. Watching without change. The fisherman sleeps. The village rests. The Nile flows on. And in this quiet balance between land, water, and night, everything continues as it always has, softly, endlessly, without beginning or end. The story does not close. It only drifts onward. Like the river itself. Next part 25. The night over the Nile grows deeper now, not darker in a sudden way, but in a slow settling that feels natural, almost like breathing in and out across the entire landscape. The river continues beneath it all. Unseen. Uninterrupted. Moving forward as it always does. The fisherman sleeps without disturbance. His rest is steady, unbroken, as if his body understands that night is not a pause, but a continuation in a different form. There are no dreams that matter enough to be remembered. Only stillness. Outside, the village is quiet in its own way. Homes rest close to the earth. Small signs of life dimmed into darkness. The world feels held gently in place by the night itself. The Nile reflects the sky in faint fragments. Starlight breaks across its surface in soft, shifting lines. Nothing stays fixed. Everything moves slowly, continuously. The river carries more than water now. It carries the memory of the day that has passed. Not as something separate, but as part of its ongoing flow. Far along its length, unseen by those resting on its banks, the water bends and turns and continues forward. Through places that are awake. Through places that are sleeping. Always moving. Always connected. Inside the fisherman's home, the lamp has grown dim. Its light is small now. Barely holding the space together. but enough to keep the darkness from becoming heavy. The fisherman's breathing remains calm. Even. Slow. There is a quiet sense in the air that nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be changed. The day has already been lived. The night is already here. Outside, the wind moves gently again. It passes over the river without sound. Without force. Just presence. The Nile responds in the smallest ways. A slight ripple. A soft shift in reflection. Then stillness again. Time here does not feel divided. There is no sharp edge between 1 hour and the next. Only a continuous flow, like water itself. The fisherman turns slightly in his sleep. A small movement. Then stillness returns. The village remains quiet. Not empty. Just resting. Like everything along the river, it is part of the same larger rhythm. The Nile continues to carry everything forward. The unseen currents beneath the surface move constantly, shaping the flow in ways that are never noticed directly, but always felt in their result. And in this way, the river becomes more than water. It becomes continuity. It becomes memory. It becomes time itself, flowing without interruption. The night deepens further. The stars remain steady above. The river below continues its endless path. Nothing breaks this rhythm. Nothing needs to. The fisherman sleeps. The village rests. The Nile flows. And everything remains gently connected within that flow, moving forward without end, without urgency, without need to arrive anywhere at all. The story continues only as the river continues. Quiet. Unbroken. Endless. Next part 26. The night is now fully settled over the Nile. Not as something heavy, but as something complete. A wide, calm presence that rests over water, land, and sky without pressure or urgency. Everything feels softened under it. Everything feels slower. The river continues its movement beneath the darkness. It does not change its pace for night. It does not pause for sleep. It simply flows, as it always has, carrying the same steady rhythm through every hour. The fisherman sleeps deeply now. His body fully resting after a long day of repetition and quiet motion. There is a sense of balance in his stillness, as if nothing in him is unfinished. Outside, the village is quiet in its most natural form. No movement along the paths. No smoke rising from fires. Only the faint outlines of homes resting under the night sky. The Nile reflects only fragments of light now. Stars broken into soft, scattered reflections that drift and shift with the smallest movement of water. Nothing holds still. Yet nothing feels unstable. There is a quiet continuity in everything. A sense that the river is not just moving through space, but through time itself. Carrying each moment forward without separating them. Inside the fisherman's home, the small light has nearly faded. Its glow is weak now, almost indistinguishable from the surrounding darkness. But it is still there. A gentle presence in the quiet room. The fisherman's breathing remains slow and steady. No tension remains in his body. No trace of the day's work except what has already settled into rest. Outside, the wind passes lightly over the river again. It does not disturb the surface. It simply moves across it, as if passing through a memory. The Nile responds in the smallest possible way. A soft ripple forms. Then disappears. As if even movement is temporary here, part of something larger that never stops. Time in this place feels less like passing and more like flowing. Not divided into hours or moments, but existing as one continuous movement from past to future. The fisherman shifts slightly in his sleep again. A natural adjustment. Then stillness returns. The village remains in deep quiet. Yet it is not empty. It is simply resting within the same rhythm as everything else along the river. The Nile carries on. Through bends. Through distance. Through darkness. Unchanged in essence. But always changing in detail. There is something steady in this continuity that does not ask to be noticed. It does not need recognition. It simply exists. The night grows deeper still. But not heavier. Only quieter. The stars above remain constant. Small points of light that seem to watch without effort or intention. The river below continues its flow beneath them all. Holding the reflection of the sky in broken, moving lines. Never the same. Never still. The fisherman sleeps. The village rests. The Nile continues. And in this quiet alignment of night, water, and silence, everything remains gently connected, part of a single, flowing rhythm that does not end, does not pause, and does not need to be understood to be felt. The story moves forward only as the river moves forward. Softly. Endlessly. Without break. Next part 27. The deepest part of the night feels almost weightless. Not empty. Not silent in a complete sense. But stretched into a calm that touches everything equally, like a soft blanket over land and water. The Nile moves through it without change. Without hesitation. The fisherman remains asleep. His body is still, fully resting, as if it has accepted the night completely. There is no resistance left in him from the day. Only quiet recovery. Only stillness. Outside, the village is reduced to faint outlines and distant memory. Houses rest in darkness. Paths are invisible now, except where the land gently suggests their presence. Everything is folded into night. The river continues its steady motion beneath all of it. Even in darkness, even in silence, it does not lose its direction. It flows forward in the same patient way it always has. The surface of the water holds faint traces of starlight. They appear briefly, then shift, then dissolve again with the movement of the current. Nothing remains fixed. Everything is in gentle motion. Inside the fisherman's home, the last small glow of light has almost disappeared. The room is now shaped mostly by shadow and the faint outline of walls. Yet it does not feel cold or empty. It feels held. The fisherman breathes evenly. Slow. Deep. There is no urgency in his rest. Only continuation in a different form. Outside, a soft wind moves across the river again. It passes without sound. Without interruption. Just a quiet presence moving over water that does not resist it. The Nile responds in its smallest language. A faint ripple forms near the bank. Then fades back into stillness. As if even movement here is temporary, always returning to calm. Time feels almost suspended in this hour. Not stopped. But flowing so gently it becomes difficult to notice its passing. The fisherman shifts once in his sleep. A natural movement. Then returns to stillness again. The village remains deeply quiet. Not abandoned. Just resting in a shared rhythm with everything around it. The river continues through the silence. Carrying unseen currents beneath its surface. Moving toward places far beyond what can be seen from its banks. There is something steady about this night that does not change from moment to moment. It simply continues. Like breathing that never fully stops. The stars above remain unchanged. Small points of distant light holding their places in the sky. They do not move quickly. They do not fade. They simply are. The Nile below mirrors them in fragments. Broken reflections that shift with every small movement of water. Never complete. Never still. And yet everything feels connected. Sky and river. Sleep and movement. Night and flow. All part of the same quiet rhythm. The fisherman sleeps on. The village rests. The river continues. And in this long, unbroken night, the story does not end or begin, it simply flows forward, as softly and endlessly as the Nile itself. Next part 28. The night begins to change again, though it is so subtle that nothing in the world seems to announce it. It is not lighter yet. It is not morning yet. But something in the darkness loosens, just slightly, like a long-held breath beginning to release. The Nile continues its endless movement beneath this shift. It does not respond quickly. It does not need to. It simply carries the change within its flow, as it carries everything else. The fisherman remains asleep. His rest is deep, steady, uninterrupted. There is a calm in him that matches the river outside, as if both are part of the same quiet system of movement and stillness. The village is still wrapped in darkness. But it is no longer the deepest part of night. A faint sense of transition begins to settle over it. Not visible. Only felt in the quiet space between moments. The river reflects this change in the smallest way. A faint softening along the horizon's reflection on its surface. A subtle shift in tone that appears and disappears without drawing attention. Inside the fisherman's home, the air feels slightly cooler. Not in a harsh way, but in the way that often comes just before morning begins to form. The fisherman stirs slightly. A small movement that does not fully wake him. Only a sign that rest is slowly preparing to end. Outside, the wind passes again over the water. It is gentle. Almost unnoticeable. But it carries with it the quiet sense that the world is slowly turning toward a new beginning. The Nile remains unchanged in its essence. It does not hurry toward morning. It does not hold on to night. It simply continues forward. The stars still hold their places above the river. But they feel slightly less sharp now. Slightly less distant. As if the sky itself is beginning to soften. The fisherman breathes a little deeper in his sleep. Then stillness returns. The village remains quiet. But the stillness is no longer absolute. There is a sense of return forming somewhere beyond sight. The river continues to flow beneath all of it. Carrying night forward. Carrying morning toward it. Never stopping. Never separating one from the other. Time in this place does not divide cleanly. It overlaps. It blends. It moves like water itself, without edges. The fisherman remains resting. But something within the rhythm of his body is already beginning to align with the coming day. Slowly. Naturally. Without awareness. Outside, the Nile carries faint reflections of shifting sky. They are not yet light. But they are no longer fully dark. Something in between. Something quietly becoming. The wind passes once more over the surface. And disappears into stillness again. Everything remains calm. Everything remains slow. And yet everything is already moving forward. The night is not ending. But it is no longer holding the same depth it had before. The river continues its path. Through darkness that is slowly loosening. Toward light that has not yet arrived. The fisherman sleeps. The village rests. The Nile flows on. And in this quiet, suspended moment between night and morning, everything remains gently connected, held in a single, continuous rhythm that never truly breaks, only changes its shape. The story continues with the river, as it always has, and as it always will, softly moving forward through time that never stands still. Next, part 29. The first hint of morning arrives without sound. It is not light in any clear form yet. Not color. Not brightness. Only a soft easing of the darkness, so subtle that it feels more like a change in feeling than in sight. The Nile carries this shift gently across its surface. The water does not become brighter immediately. It simply begins to reflect the sky in a slightly different way, as if the night is slowly loosening its hold. The fisherman is still asleep. His breathing remains slow and even. His body rests deeply, as if fully trusting the rhythm of the world around him. Inside the village, everything remains quiet. But the silence is no longer as deep as it was in the heart of the night. There is a faint sense of return beginning to gather. Not movement. Not activity. Only potential. The river continues its steady flow beneath all of it. It does not change direction. It does not pause. It simply moves forward, carrying night into the earliest shape of morning. Inside the fisherman's home, the air is cool and still. The small space feels held between two states of time. Neither fully night nor yet morning. The fisherman stirs slightly again. A small shift in his sleep. As if his body is slowly beginning to recognize the coming change. Then stillness returns. Outside, the sky begins to lose its deepest tone. A faint gray-blue begins to appear near the horizon, almost indistinguishable at first. The Nile reflects this change in soft, broken patterns. Nothing sharp. Nothing clear. Only gradual transformation. A light breeze passes over the river. It is gentle enough that it does not disturb the surface. Only moves across it like a passing thought. The river remains constant in its motion. But its appearance shifts slowly with the sky above it. Always connected. Always responsive. The fisherman breathes more deeply now in his sleep. A subtle sign of returning awareness beneath rest. The village remains still. But the sense of stillness has changed slightly. It feels less like an ending. More like a pause before beginning again. The stars above the river are still visible. But they are fading now. Not disappearing quickly. Just slowly stepping back as the sky begins to lighten. The Nile carries their reflection in faint traces. Broken light drifting across the moving surface. Never fixed. Never held. Time here continues to flow without edges. Night blending into morning without interruption. One becoming the other in quiet continuity. The fisherman remains asleep. But something in his rest feels closer to waking. Not yet movement. Only readiness. Outside, the river continues its long journey. Through places still dark. Through places beginning to lighten. Always moving forward. And in this quiet space between night and day, everything feels suspended in a gentle balance held together by the same steady rhythm that has carried the river since the beginning of time. The story continues, like the Nile itself, flowing softly forward into what comes next. Next part 30. Morning is still not fully here. But it is no longer far away. It exists now as a quiet presence behind the fading night, slowly gathering itself in the distance. The Nile reflects this shift in the softest way. The water is no longer fully dark, yet not fully light. It holds both states together, like a memory of night mixed with the first breath of day. The fisherman begins to wake. Not suddenly. Not fully. But in stages, like the world around him. A slow return from deep rest. He opens his eyes for a moment, then closes them again. There is no urgency. Only the natural movement from sleep toward awareness. Outside, the village is still quiet. But the stillness now feels lighter. As if something is preparing to move again, even though nothing has started yet. The river continues its steady flow beneath everything. It does not wait for morning. It does not hurry toward it. It simply carries both night and day together in the same continuous motion. Inside the fisherman's home, the air feels slightly different now. The coolness of night is beginning to soften. Not replaced yet by warmth, but gently shifting toward it. The fisherman sits up slowly. His movement is calm, unforced. The transition from rest to waking is almost unnoticeable in its ease. He remains still for a moment, listening. Not to sound, but to the quiet presence of the new day forming outside. The sky beyond the walls is beginning to change. A faint glow spreads near the horizon, barely visible at first, like light remembering how to exist. The Nile reflects this change in thin, soft gradients. Darkness loosens. Light gathers. Neither fully present yet. Both existing together. The fisherman stands. Slowly. Familiar movements returning without thought. Clothing. Balance. Breath. Outside, the village is still mostly asleep. But small signs of life begin to return in distant corners. Not movement yet. Only readiness. The river remains unchanged in its essence. It continues forward, carrying the edge of night into the beginning of day. The fisherman steps outside. The air feels different now. Cool, but with a faint softness that did not exist earlier in the night. The path toward the river is quiet beneath his feet. Familiar. Steady. Worn by countless mornings before this one. The boat rests where it was left. Still tied. Still waiting. As if it has never left the river's care. The fisherman unties it. A simple motion. A quiet beginning. The boat moves gently into the water. The current accepts it immediately, as it always does. No resistance. Only flow. The pole touches the surface. A soft push forward. And the day begins again. The net is prepared in silence. Folded. Held. Released into the river. It opens beneath the surface, disappearing into the slowly brightening water. And the waiting returns. The fisherman stands steady in his boat. The river beneath him carries both the memory of night and the promise of morning. The sky continues to brighten very slowly. Not fully day yet. But no longer night. And in this quiet, suspended moment, everything begins again in the same gentle rhythm it has always known, flowing forward with the river that never stops, never breaks, and never truly ends. Next part 31, the river greets the new morning in the same quiet way it always has. There is no sudden brightness, no sharp change from darkness to light. Only a slow unfolding, as if the world is remembering how to see again. The Nile's surface now holds a softer glow. Not fully illuminated, but no longer hidden. Light spreads gently across it, moving with the current, stretching and fading in long, delicate patterns. The fisherman continues his familiar rhythm. The net rests beneath the water once more, unseen, carried by the slow movement of the river. The boat feels steady beneath him. The wood has already begun to warm slightly with the returning day. Small changes. Subtle shifts. Nothing that demands attention. He waits. Not with expectation, but with the calm understanding that the river will respond in its own time. Around him, the village begins to stir more clearly now. Not in noise. but in presence. A few distant movements. A soft return of life to the edges of the land. The fisherman lifts the net. The motion is unchanged. Water slides away in thin streams, returning to the river with barely a sound. A small catch. Simple. Familiar. He places it carefully with the others. The container grows slowly heavier with the steady accumulation of the morning. He resets the net again. It disappears beneath the surface, becoming part of the flowing river once more. And the waiting continues. The sky has now shifted further toward daylight. The gray-blue tones have softened into pale brightness. Not strong yet, but clearly present. The river reflects this change with quiet grace. Light ripples across its surface, never staying in one place for long. Always moving. Always changing. The fisherman's movements remain steady. There is no hurry in him. No resistance. Only the same rhythm that has carried him through so many mornings before this one. He lifts the net again. A few fish. Nothing unexpected. Nothing unusual. He gathers them without pause and places them with the others. Each motion remains part of the same continuous flow. The boat drifts slightly with the current. The fisherman adjusts it gently. A small correction. A familiar balance. The river continues beneath everything. It does not separate night from day. It carries both together, blending them in a single, uninterrupted movement. The air grows slightly warmer now. Not fully warm, but no longer cool in the same way it was before sunrise. The fisherman pauses briefly. A quiet moment within the rhythm. Not an interruption. Just part of it. Then he continues. The net returns to the water. The waiting resumes. The sun is still rising, though it is now clearly above the horizon. Its light spreads further across the Nile, revealing more of the river's surface with each passing moment. The fisherman lifts the net once more. A small catch. Enough. Always enough. He places it with the others. The container reflects the steady, patient work of the morning. The river flows on beneath all of this. Carrying light. Carrying movement. Carrying time itself forward without hesitation. And as the morning fully begins to take shape around him, the fisherman remains within its rhythm, quiet, steady, and inseparable from the endless flow of the Nile. And the story final part. The morning settles fully over the Nile now. Not with sudden clarity, but with a quiet completion, as if the world has slowly arrived exactly where it was always going. Light spreads evenly across the water, no longer hesitant, no longer fading. It rests there gently, touching every ripple, every slow movement, every quiet corner of the river. The fisherman pauses. For the first time in many hours, there is no immediate motion in his hands. The net rests. The boat is still. The river continues. There is no final moment that feels like an ending. Only a soft understanding that the work of this stretch of time has completed itself, as it always does. He looks across the water one last time. The Nile stretches far in both directions, calm and unbroken, carrying everything within it without effort. The same river that held his morning. The same river that held his night. The same river that will hold the day still to come. Slowly, he begins to turn the boat toward the shore. Not as a departure from the river, but as a return that has always been part of the rhythm. The current helps him without resistance. The water does not let go. It simply guides. The boat touches the bank with a quiet, familiar contact. No sound of finality. Only arrival. He steps out. The ground is steady beneath him. Different from the river, but not separate from it. Both belong to the same world. Both shaped by the same time. He ties the boat. The rope rests in its place, as it always has. A simple gesture that belongs to countless mornings before this one. The container of fish is lifted. It carries the quiet result of hours that felt both long and gentle. Not measured in effort, but in presence. The village is awake now in full. Life continues along the paths, in homes, in small movements that echo the same rhythm he has just left behind. He walks slowly back toward his home. The river remains behind him. But not as something left. Only as something continuing. Inside, the space is calm. The familiar stillness of return fills the room. He sets everything down without haste. Without ceremony. There is no need to mark the end of the day's work in any special way. Because nothing truly ends here. It only changes form. Outside, the Nile flows on. It does not notice departure. It does not require return. It simply continues. Through sun. Through silence. Through time. The fisherman sits for a moment in the quiet of his home. Not thinking forward. Not holding on to what has passed. Only resting in the simple truth of what is. The river will rise again tomorrow. The boat will move again. The net will open again. The same rhythm will return without needing to be called. And so, there is no final ending to hold onto. Only the understanding that life here is shaped like the Nile itself, steady, continuous, and always flowing forward. The story does not close. It simply drifts onward. Quietly. Endlessly. Like water moving through time.